The story begins with a young man with black hair. His body was injured and his hands were tied. He didn't understand how things had reached that point. In that strange place, a gigantic orc announced with authority that the next to receive divine punishment would be the inferior human who had defiled their sacred land. For thousands of years, that region, considered sacred by the orcs and home to the beast folk, had been completely isolated from the rest of the world. No human had ever set foot there. But now that had changed. For the first time, a human had crossed the barriers of that territory, and they saw it as an act of war. The young man, however, still didn't understand anything. Not long ago, he had simply been working in a cave. Now he found himself in this strange world, accused of crimes he didn't even comprehend. 5 hours before all of this happened, the same boy who was now about to be executed by the orcs was having lunch. His name was Tsuyoshi Tsukishiro. He worked cleaning caves, one of the many janitors in the dungeon system. A co-worker came up to talk when another appeared, calling the two of them. They needed to prepare. The heroes were about to arrive. It was common in that area for heroes to enter the caves to fight monsters, while the janitors took care of cleaning and collecting leftovers. Soon, a huge glowing portal appeared in front of everyone. From it emerged warriors in shining armor. They were the heroes. Apparently confident, they believed it would be easy to handle the situation, as it was just a rank C cave. Meanwhile, Tsuyoshi, unaware of what awaited him, simply did his job. After the heroes defeated the Darklings, the janitors, also known as scavengers, entered the cave. They had no direct connection to the heroes and lived in completely different worlds. Tsuyoshi, for example, had failed his awakening test due to his physical condition, but still dreamed of becoming a hero one day. That day, the job had to be done quickly. Time was limited. During the collection, Tsuyoshi found a shield fragment. One of his coworkers commented that it could be worth some good money. Excited, he decided to explore the cave a bit more. He had 3.5 hours left for that. Time passed. 3.5 hours later, Tsuyoshi was still searching through the cave. He found it strange that he hadn't come across anything else. If all he had was a shield fragment, it wouldn't be enough to cover even a day of his sister, Karina's medical expenses. That was when he found a well and smelled something unusual, as if something valuable was hidden there. Without hesitation, he decided to investigate. As he went down, he was surprised by what he saw. A ring was stuck on a skeleton's hand. Apparently, no hero had noticed it. Carefully, he took the ring and started analyzing it. He was thrilled. Maybe it was a rare item, a ring that increased stats. If he was lucky, he could sell it for a good amount and help Karina. He thought about showing it to Mr. Nakazato later to check its level, but when he put the ring on his finger, something unexpected happened. The ring began to glow, and he felt energy piercing his skin. Right after, a system panel appeared in front of him, with a voice announcing that he had acquired the ring without limits. The item had recognized him as its rightful owner, and from that moment on, it could no longer be removed or transferred. The system also stated that the limitless passage would soon open. Confused, Tsuyoshi tried to understand what was happening. He wondered whose voice it was. Suddenly, a black hole opened in the center of the ring, like a portal to another dimension. Frightened, he screamed for help. The other janitors heard his screams and began to search for him, not understanding what was going on. But Tsuyoshi was no longer in that cave. When he regained consciousness, he was tied up in front of an altar. He had been captured by beast folk and was now being judged as a criminal. Apparently, that altar was part of the beast folk's sacred land, and divine punishment was real. A terrible bolt of lightning fell from the sky upon the accused. It was a judgment. There stood the Beast King, a feared figure who led the ceremony. They had 3 criminals to punish. The first was an ogre who had sold confidential information to elves and humans. He was considered a traitor to the nation. The Divine King's hammer, enveloped in lightning, struck the ogre with brutal force. The orcs celebrated the event. Next would be the human who had invaded their sacred land. It was Tsuyoshi. He was desperate. He tried to explain that it was all a misunderstanding. He had gotten lost and ended up there by accident. He didn't want to die. He still needed to take care of Karina. He still had a dream, to become a hero. But when the bolt of divine punishment came down to kill him, something surprising happened. Tsuyoshi managed to dodge it. Everyone present was completely shocked by what they had just seen. The orcs in particular saw it as unprecedented. A human had escaped the divine punishment lightning. Even so, Tsuyoshi didn't have much time to celebrate. When he tried to get up quickly, he was hit squarely by another attack. However, at that critical moment, the ring without limits began to glow intensely. Even after being struck, Tsuyoshi remained conscious. The ring system was activated, initiating the process of divine selection. His body began to be reconstructed. It was as if a new force was taking over him. The system announced that he would receive the Supreme Physique, along with a new ability called Divine Eye. Tsuyoshi felt that something was calling him, something greater than he could comprehend. As the process continued, the beast folk present began to tremble. They were frightened by the fact that the human had resisted the divine hammer. When the process was completed, the the system revealed his new status, Chosen One. Tsuyoshi stood up and firmly held the divine hammer. The system warned him that he needed to become stronger to unlock the weapon's full potential. The next prisoner to be executed was a beast woman, and she was astonished to see that a human had managed to hold the hammer that no one else ever could. When Tsuyoshi checked his new status, he realized his power had increased in a terrifying way. At that moment, the orc general, named Ryuga, approached him. Ryuga declared that a human like him should not be touching the sacred hammer. He ordered him to drop it immediately and accept his punishment with dignity. But the system activated the divine eye, and Tsuyoshi could now see detailed information about any object or creature he focused on. He looked at Ryuga and discovered that the orc was an elite general, a level 84 warrior. Even in front of such a powerful enemy, Tsuyoshi tried to talk. He didn't want to fight. It was all a misunderstanding. But Ryuga wasn't interested in words. He pointed his weapon at the young man and promised to give him a quick death. A massive explosion marked the beginning of the battle. But to everyone's surprise, Tsuyoshi managed to block Ryuga's weapon with his own hammer. He defended himself as if he were bare-handed and realized the hammer was truly extraordinary. Tsuyoshi tried once again to reason with the orc, but Ryuga grabbed him like a pebble and threw him high into the air with great force. While airborne, the system activated another ability, absolute replication. With it, Tsuyoshi could copy an enemy's ability as long as he managed to touch their heart, and that's exactly what he did. He touched Ryuga's heart during the fall. At that moment, several abilities appeared before him. The flood of information overwhelmed him, but he soon found one that seemed to match the hammer. It was called Heaven Shaker. Without hesitation, he replicated the technique and struck Ryuga with all his strength. The impact was immense. Everyone stood in shock at what they had just witnessed. But even that powerful blow wasn't enough to defeat the orc general. Then, the Beast King appeared. He observed the scene closely and spoke directly to Tsuyoshi, saying that the hammer had chosen him. That could be a true sign from the gods. It had been centuries, or even millennia, since anyone had last been chosen by the divine hammer. The king tried to calm the crowd. He explained that if Tsuyoshi was the chosen one, then perhaps he was the future leader of the beast folk. According to the ancient prophecy, they should give him time to grow. Many agreed. The prophecy didn't specify that the leader had to be a beast folk. It only said it would be the one who embodied the hope of the people. Ryuga tried to protest, reminding them that Tsuyoshi was a human, but the king silenced him. He asked what was wrong with that. The prophecy spoke of the chosen one, not the race. The general admitted he was wrong and apologized. The king approached Tsuyoshi and asked his name. The young man replied, revealing he was Tsuyoshi Tsukishiro. The king then made him an offer. If he was willing to carry the future of their people on his shoulders, he would be set free. But under one condition: he was still too weak. He would have 1 year to grow stronger and return to that place. At that moment, the king touched Tsuyoshi's forehead, marking him mentally. If he didn't return within the time limit, he would be hunted and killed, no matter where he was. Everyone awaited the boy's answer. He, confused, didn't know what to say, but those present began to encourage him. The beast woman, who was next in line for execution, looked at him intently. She told him he should earn his freedom and become stronger. Tsuyoshi used the divine eye on her. He couldn't see her name, but he saw she was a level 72 warrior. He grew curious, unable to understand why she had been condemned. In the end, he answered the king, saying he accepted the offer. But he had one condition. He wanted to take the beast woman with him. Not even she understood why, but he thought it was only fair. That way, they would be even. Night fell. Tsuyoshi looked up at the sky, reflecting on everything. It had all started with the ring without limits, an item that couldn't be removed from his finger. Because of it, he had gained strange abilities, been transported to another world, and now carried the future of an entire people on his shoulders. Deep down, he still wondered how he would get back home. The beast woman approached and said the preparations were complete. She called Tsuyoshi master, which left him confused. Without hesitation, she explained that she had made a decision. She would now serve him. To her, he was her savior. Soon after, gazing at the darkening sky, she said it was getting late and began to walk away calmly. Tsuyoshi sighed. He thought that otherworld was truly amazing, full of things he had never imagined. However, he quickly remembered Karina, his sister. She was still waiting for him, so he asked the ring without limits to open the passage again. To his surprise, a portal formed before him. Tsuyoshi believed he could finally return home. Without thinking twice, he stepped through the portal and vanished from that world. While floating between dimensions, he felt the unpleasant sensation of space-time distortion. It was as if he were being torn apart from the inside. Shortly after, he reappeared in the cave where it had all begun. He was excited. The abilities he had acquired in the other world were still with him. He checked his status and confirmed that his level remained the same. However, he noticed that the sacred hammer hadn't returned with him. That's when he discovered a strange rule. Personal attributes were shared between both worlds, but items remained in their respective places. Suddenly, one of the janitors approached and asked what all that commotion was, saying it was time to leave before the cave closed. Still disoriented, Tsuyoshi asked why those people were still there. He thought he had been gone for hours. Little by little, he realized something was wrong. One of the janitors replied that they had been in the same place the entire time and told him to hurry out so he wouldn't get trapped forever. As he climbed back up, Tsuyoshi understood the truth. Time had frozen while he was in the other world. Not a single second had passed there. Now he wondered if time was also frozen in the beastfolk world. Curious, he asked one of the janitors if the next awakening test would be held the following day. This test was important. Before any of that had happened, even before finding the ring, Tsuyoshi had already faced great hardships in life. He painfully remembered the day he carried his sister in his arms while a gigantic creature destroyed the city. She said she couldn't feel her legs anymore, and both were covered in injuries. During the escape, the monster captured their parents. Tsuyoshi's father, using the last of his strength, shouted for him to never stop running. He begged him not to look back, to protect his sister, and to flee the darkness surrounding them. That was how he managed to get her to a hospital, but the cost was high. Since that day, Karina had used a wheelchair. When he visited her, she asked if he was okay. He said he was and asked how her legs were doing. The nurse explained that nerve pain was common, the result of severe damage. She received injections to ease the pain, but still couldn't stand. Using the divine eye, Tsuyoshi read the full diagnosis on the system panel. He discovered that her legs had been crushed by a collapsing building, with 98% of the nerve cells necrotized. The condition involved intermittent damage, and there was no chance of natural recovery. Even so, he believed that the 1% hope was enough. To him, Karina deserved to live like any other girl, to study, go out, and smile. She was the only family he had left. He couldn't stand to see her suffer, and so, despite all the hardships, he would do anything to help her stand again. He believed that if he could become a hero, he would gain access to more resources, more knowledge, and maybe even find a cure for her. The next day, he went to the site of the bravery test, where the official awakening assessment took place. The time had finally come. The examiner recognized him and commented that Tsuyoshi had already failed before and would likely fail again, as the device used scientifically reliable measurements from every angle. Even so, Tsuyoshi entered the machine's metal structure. He took a deep breath, placed his hand on it, and focused with determination, knowing he had to take it seriously this time. He activated his supreme physique. The power he released was so intense that it caused a minor earthquake at the site, surprising everyone present. The measurement result appeared shortly after, 5,400 points. It shattered all records. The previous number one in combat power among level 3 heroes, age 30, had only 930 points. Tsuyoshi's score was completely beyond the norm. Not even he expected to have such a durable body. Tsuyoshi felt the need to better understand the Divine Hammer's powers, so he decided to test its real impact. When he held it again, the system immediately issued a warning. Due to his current limitations, he could only maintain contact with the hammer for 1 second. Even so, he believed that was enough time for the machine to register his combat power. With confidence, he touched the machine and unleashed his full strength. The result was catastrophic. An earthquake shook the entire city. The machine was completely overloaded, triggering a blackout across the entire region. The examiner, in shock, suspended the test immediately and ordered a full evacuation. In the midst of all the confusion, Tsuyoshi was barely recognizable. He looked completely different, with an aura so intense it startled the evaluator. As he left the place, Tsuyoshi realized he had underestimated the power of the hammer. He hadn't expected all his energy to be drained in just 1 second. He understood then that he should avoid using it until he was strong enough to handle it. Even so, he was happy. He was now officially a hero. With his new status, he was sent to the training fields. There, he met Gaia, the one responsible for training new heroes. Using the Divine Eye, Tsuyoshi quickly noticed that Gaia, despite his position, was weaker than him. During the introduction, Gaia informed the students that they would all be sent to a rank D dungeon the next day. The idea was to gain field experience and, from there, decide which profession would suit each of them best. The news caught everyone by surprise, as they had expected more basic training. But Gaia was direct. He said there was no time to waste, and that everyone needed to learn how to fight in real situations. After the briefing, Tsuyoshi returned home. The ring's cooldown period had ended, so he decided to return to the other world. Crossing the portal again, he found himself back in the same place as before. It was night, and the setting remained unchanged. Even his clothes had returned to the same state as the first time. Everything in that world stayed frozen in time until he came back. The Beast Woman appeared and asked if he was okay. Tsuyoshi said everything was fine and mentioned he was excited to level up. He told her that there were level 3 goblins nearby and asked for her opinion. She warned him to be careful because Although low level, they were in large numbers. They soon went into combat. The beast woman was the first to attack. Tsuyoshi, excited, clapped when he saw her movement. He admired the skill of a level 72 warrior. She blushed at the compliment and thought he was very kind. Tsuyoshi asked her to teach him the technique she had used. She explained that it was the instant strike, an advanced ability for experienced warriors. She said he wasn't ready for it yet. Even so, Tsuyoshi decided he would also become a warrior now that he had her by his side. He changed his class in the system. The woman blushed, surprised that he had done that for her. More goblins appeared. Tsuyoshi decided to take care of them alone. He borrowed the beast woman's daggers and with quick movements defeated several goblins at once. She was shocked. Given his level, that should have been impossible. Tsuyoshi was also surprised. It felt too easy. He kept attacking and eliminated the remaining enemies. Among the defeated goblins, he found a wooden club. He thought it wouldn't be too bad to use it for now. The beast woman agreed but warned that they needed to gather basic equipment quickly, as what he was using offered almost no defense. Tsuyoshi agreed. As they moved on, he took a look at the system panel. He saw that there were 2 storage slots and that the divine hammer occupied one of them. He learned that as he grew and trained, the number of slots would increase. He wanted to find out how to expand them even further. Suddenly, he was surprised by a scream from the beast woman, warning him to be careful. A large group of level 4 goblins appeared at once. The warrior prepared to attack, but Tsuyoshi stopped her. He said he wanted to face them all alone because he needed more experience points. After defeating the goblins, the wooden club Tsuyoshi was using broke. He was a bit frustrated with how fragile the weapons were in that world. Even so, they continued facing the remaining enemies. There were many goblins in that area, but they took them down one by one, until none remained. When the battle was over, Tsuyoshi noticed something curious. He was getting much stronger than he expected. While working as a janitor, the heroes always complained that level 3 or 4 kobolds barely gave 10 experience points. The guild monopolized almost everything, which made the heroes frustrated. However, in that other world, Tsuyoshi could keep all the experience for himself. Besides, the monsters there seemed to grant much more experience. He thought it was simply amazing. After clearing the entire area, they headed to the boss room. The beast woman explained that the goblin boss was possessed by darkness. Tsuyoshi was shocked. In his world, darkness also existed, hidden in the caves. He began to wonder if the 2 entities were the same. Looking at the dark goblin, he had the feeling it resembled the monster that killed his parents. The warrior explained that enemies taken by darkness were extremely dangerous. Even though it was only level 6, that boss had its power drastically increased. Darkness was surrounded by mystery, and for that reason, she didn't want to let Tsuyoshi face it alone. But he refused her help. He wanted to face that enemy with his own hands. Even without knowing if the 2 worlds were connected, he felt he needed to take revenge. He charged at the boss but was struck hard. The blow was so violent that his clothes tore apart. His body weakened and began to tremble. He didn't want to fall. He thought of his father, his mother, and Karina. He couldn't lose there. With effort, he activated Supreme Physique. Even without a weapon, he believed his own body was his greatest strength. He landed a direct punch on the boss. The force was so great that the possessed goblin was obliterated on impact. The system notified that he had reached level 4. Looking at the warrior beside him, he stated with conviction that he would destroy all those involved with the darkness. However, he realized his arm had been severely damaged by the strike. If not treated quickly, he could lose it. Right after, he fainted. The beast woman ran to him, placed his head on her lap, and applied emergency medicine. She asked him not to worry, saying she would take care of him. An hour later, Tsuyoshi woke up. He felt much better. Around him, small creatures watched with curiosity. The warrior was very happy to see that the medicine had worked. He in turn felt more energized than before. Soon the rewards arrived. They received some items, but the highlight was a treasure chest of darkness. Tsuyoshi was surprised. When he opened it, he found the Dark Goblin set. It was a complete set. However, he noticed that there was only 1 space left in his Divine Consciousness inventory. Even so, he decided to store the outfit. Outside, the beast woman improvised a black shirt for him. When he put it on, he thought it looked really good. Now, with his new level and equipment, Tsuyoshi felt it was time to return. He went back to his apartment and threw himself onto the bed. He thought about how changing worlds wasn't that simple. That night, all he had to do was find a quiet place and wait for the warrior to fall asleep to cross the portal again. And this time, he had obtained many valuable items. The next morning, he decided to test the Dark Goblin set. The outfit had special abilities, which made him excited, but when he stored the set back into his inventory, his phone started ringing. He answered and heard the voice of the head nurse, saying that some scary men were at the hospital trying to take Karina, claiming she owed them money. This caught Tsuyoshi off guard and made him furious. He went straight to the hospital. There, he saw some men threatening Karina. One of them said she had no idea, but her brother had signed a debt contract and hadn't paid on time. Now they intended to take her as payment, selling her to the black market. Karina was in shock. She was certain her brother would never do something like that. The man explained that he had been paying little by little, but the amount wasn't enough to even cover the interest. At that moment, Tsuyoshi arrived, kicking the door open. His eyes were filled with rage. In a firm voice, he declared that everyone there was damned and they better get ready. One of the loan sharks tried to provoke him, saying he didn't need a defective sister. Before he could finish, Tsuyoshi landed a punch so strong that it broke the man's glasses and knocked out his teeth. The loan shark's bodyguards tried to fight back, but one of them had his arm broken with a single blow. Seeing the situation getting out of control, the loan shark pulled a gun and shot at Tsuyoshi. But the boy simply caught the bullet in the air, as if it were the easiest thing in the world. Everyone in the room was stunned. He told the criminals that he was a hero now. The three of them began to tremble in fear. The nurse took the chance to call hospital security, reporting that loan sharks were threatening a patient and her brother. But before they could be detained, the men tried to leave, saying it wasn't a problem, and Tsuyoshi could keep the debt. They apologized for bothering him. However, deep down, the loan shark was already planning to inform his boss. Because if Tsuyoshi really was a hero now, the plan to take Karina might fail. His boss was a level 100 warrior, someone capable of destroying everything. Calmer now, Tsuyoshi apologized to his sister. He said that if they didn't manage to pay, the blue cobras would come back. He told her that he had spent the last few days trying to find a way to pay the debt, but now he was a hero, and she didn't need to worry anymore. Karina was shocked to learn that her brother had become a hero. He showed her the badge, but explained that he was still just a trainee. He would be officially recognized as soon as he participated in the cave expedition that day. He revealed that he had borrowed $60,000 from the Blue Cobra gang to cover Karina's treatment. If he relied only on his hero salary, it would take too long to pay. That's why he believed the only solution was to sell all his hero equipment. Then, Tsuyoshi went to the cave as he had agreed with instructor Gaia. There, he and the other participants listened to the rules of the test to become official heroes. The most important rule was that all equipment found in the cave had to be handed over without exception. Gaia tried to reassure the group, saying he was a level 9 warrior and that if they followed his instructions, they wouldn't have problems passing the exam. He even said that maybe they would all become heroes thanks to his help. However, each of them would have to pay a 20,000 yen fee after the test. This discouraged the participants, but Tsuyoshi found it strange to have to pay something extra, especially since the equipment would go to Gaia. Some other participants, who were also taking the test with Tsuyoshi, told him to stay quiet. According to them, Gaia had the guild's support, and it was better not to go against him. The instructor reinforced that those were his rules, and that if anyone didn't have money, they could try the solo exam. Faced with that, Tsuyoshi decided to accept the challenge. He thought it was fairer and more convenient to sign up for the solo test. When he informed them of his decision, the person in charge of the exam questioned him, asking if he was crazy. He explained that no one had ever passed that test, even though it was in a Class C cave. For a novice, it was practically an impossible mission, but Tsuyoshi only asked them to let him begin. As soon as he entered the portal to the cave, he was surprised by the environment. Suddenly, a monster tried to attack him, but the creature's weapon broke when it hit his head. Tsuyoshi wasn't scared. He knew that with his current power, those enemies wouldn't be able to hurt him. With ease, he destroyed the goblin. The real problem was that the experience gained from monsters in the real world was much lower than the experience from the other world. Soon, a group of goblins appeared to attack him all at once. Without wasting time, he put on his combat gear and defeated them all at once. Meanwhile, on the other side of the portal, the examiner was growing concerned. It had been almost an hour since Tsuyoshi entered, and until now, no one had ever lasted that long alone in there. He was beginning to think he would soon have to declare the boy dead. However, the system updated the results and confirmed that Tsuyoshi had passed. When he came out of the portal, he was completely beaten up, but still had the strength to ask if there was a place where he could take a bath. Meanwhile, Gaia, who was with the other candidates, received a message through his earpiece. He was in shock to hear that Tsuyoshi had passed the solo test. Refusing to accept that result, he went to confront the protagonist. He wanted to know if Tsuyoshi had used any high-level equipment, because until then, no rookie had ever passed the test. Tsuyoshi replied that just because no one had passed before didn't mean it was impossible. Maybe what really motivated him was the unjust charge of 20,000 yen after the exam. Enraged, Gaia thought it was some kind of provocation and tried to punch the boy, but Tsuyoshi easily caught his fist. That left Gaia stunned. The strength and speed the boy showed didn't match a level 4. He then pulled out a dagger and asked what Tsuyoshi was hiding. Before he could injure him, the blade broke when it hit Tsuyoshi's arm, leaving Gaia even more surprised. He insisted on knowing if the equipment used was of high quality. At that moment, Tsuyoshi began to worry. He had revealed too much about his strength and knew it would be a problem if they discovered his secret. secret. He tried to cover it up by saying that the dagger was probably old and worn out, and that the attack could have been dangerous. Soon after, the examiner arrived, apologizing for having kept him waiting. He handed over the official ID and confirmed that Tsuyoshi was now a hero. Later, back at the apartment, Tsuyoshi thought he had thrown Gaia off his trail, but he was wrong. The instructor was right at his door, accompanied by members of the Crazy Wolf Gang. After breaking in, Gaia ordered them to capture whoever was inside. Afterwards, they planned to divide everything they found as treasure. But to their misfortune, Tsuyoshi was already prepared. He blasted the door open with force. Even though there were level 10 mages among the enemies, their combat power was only 3,500, and he believed he could beat them. A bald mage was the first to attack, launching a fire spell at Tsuyoshi. The protagonist realized that, although his shirt resisted physical attacks, it didn't protect against magic. It was very different from fighting goblins. He immediately decided to flee. He knew that against magical attacks, he could lose. He jumped out the window, focusing his body enhancement on his legs. But as he did, he was surprised by a gang member, level 12, who attacked him with full force. The impact threw him to the ground. Luckily, the black goblin said he was wearing reduced the damage. He stood up, ready to fight, wearing his special gear, and then he prepared to counterattack. During the ambush, one of the enemy mages used a special skill that paralyzed the target's movements for a second and a half. Tsuyoshi was about to be attacked again when the cooldown time of the Ring of the Unlimited ended, allowing him to use it. He barely escaped the attack. Activating the ring, he was transported to the other world and narrowly escaped the critical situation he was in. He realized then that he needed to level up and learn new skills. He had relied too much on his good equipment, but understood that without the right abilities to win, he could lose everything. In the alternate world, it was already night, and the cat-eared girl was sleeping. Tsuyoshi decided to wait until morning. As soon as she woke up, he didn't waste any time and asked if she could sew another piece of clothing for him. Together, they went to a small combat academy belonging to the Beastmen tribe. There, an orc explained that despite the Beast King's interest in Tsuyoshi, he needed to meet a few requirements to enroll. First, reach level 6, then pass a specific exam. Since Tsuyoshi was still level 4, the orc said it was too soon. The girl with cat ears didn't know about that requirement because she had spent a long time training in the cave. She apologized for not mentioning it earlier and suggested he level up in a lower difficulty cave nearby. However, the orc made his disdain for Tsuyoshi clear, considering him unworthy. According to him, if it weren't for the king's interest, Tsuyoshi would already be in pieces. He also began insulting the girl, which enraged the protagonist. Without hesitation, Tsuyoshi walked up to the orc and demanded that he apologize. The orc tried to justify himself, saying the girl was a hybrid between human and beast. This surprised Tsuyoshi, since hybrids didn't have names, which explained why he hadn't been able to discover hers with his divine eye skill. He also learned that hybrids were looked down upon everywhere, considered humble regardless of position or status, and therefore were never given names. Meanwhile, several goblin archers appeared around them. The orc maintained his arrogant stance, saying Tsuyoshi shouldn't get full of himself just because the king had shown interest in him. If he chose violence, he would get it back in kind. He also declared that he would only apologize to the girl if Tsuyoshi passed the exam. Faced with the situation, the protagonist decided to give the girl a name. He looked at the orc and stated that her name was Sakura and that he should remember it. The girl was surprised and touched by the name she had received. After that, the two set off together to level up. They went to another cave. Sakura had bought him a pair of daggers, and Tsuyoshi was satisfied with the purchase. The cave was filled with fox-type beastmen. They were level 5, moved quickly, and were smarter than regular beastmen. That was where Tsuyoshi took the opportunity to test his new dagger. The creatures tried to attack him, but their weapons broke easily against his body. He defeated them all but still felt uneasy, remembering the 3 enemies from the Crazy Wolf Gang, especially the bald level 12 mage. He knew that if he didn't increase his level, he would be at a disadvantage. He then decided he would reach level 6 immediately, so that even the most arrogant beastmen would have to bow their heads. With that goal in mind, he reached the cave boss, a level 7 fox beastman. The protagonist immediately became interested in the sword he was carrying. He thought it would be perfect for his arsenal. Noticing his interest, Sakura explained that boss items could drop as rewards, but the chance depended on their rarity. She said it would be better to keep fighting until he got what he wanted, like in games, in a process known as grinding. With that explanation, everything started to make more sense to Tsuyoshi. He then checked the sword's name, Cold Blacklight Sword, with only a 6% drop rate. He thought that was very low until he found out there was a trading system. At the moment, the only resource he had for trading was a high probability roll, which seemed like an advantage. He traded without hesitation and told Sakura he would take that sword, since it would make him stronger and still matched his current level. The cave boss noticed Tsuyoshi's presence. Sakura then suggested he set the sword on fire, since the enemy feared flames. The boss wielded a sword with 4 ice attributes, making the battle even more interesting. Ice versus fire. During the fight, Tsuyoshi managed to hit the boss's arm and struck a weak spot, which changed the enemy's status to cowardice, allowing double damage. He found that fascinating and decided to seize the opportunity. Sakura advised him to aim for the enemy's neck. Following the tip, he used his Heaven Shaker skill and managed to defeat the boss. With that, he gained a lot of experience and obtained the sword he had been longing for. Despite his exceptional physique, he knew he could still get hurt if he was careless. But now, with a weapon that matched his style, he would be able to deliver even more powerful attacks. With the new sword in hand, Tsuyoshi felt ready to challenge the three members of Crazy Wolf. He had the feeling that, with this new power, things could get much more interesting. Tsuyoshi wanted to level up as fast as possible. His goal was to reach level 6 so he could take the Combat Academy test. Sakura then explained that he could use a reset scroll, an item that made monsters respawn faster inside caves or dungeons. The scroll's effect was less effective in high-level or special areas, but since the Fox Beastman cave was a low-level area, it would work very well there. She had a few of those scrolls saved, and she believed they would be enough for Tsuyoshi to reach level 6. The two left the cave, and outside she handed the item to him. The protagonist was anxious. He didn't want to waste time. Soon he returned to face the cave creatures. After many battles, he finally reached the second fight against the boss, already at level 5. After defeating the boss once again, he reached level 6. Now, he was ready to take the exam. Tsuyoshi returned to the entrance of the Combat Academy. When the orcs saw him, they were shocked. They couldn't believe someone could gain 2 levels in a single day. He was wearing the set of clothes from the Fox Beastman, which he had obtained by repeatedly defeating those creatures. He wanted the orc to call the examiner immediately, as he didn't want to wait until the next day. The examiner arrived clearly annoyed. He had been about to sleep and didn't want to waste time with anyone. Looking at Tsuyoshi, he showed disinterest, but the protagonist said that he now met the requirements and could take the test. Even so, the examiner warned Tsuyoshi not to be overconfident. Being level 6 didn't guarantee approval. That was when the orc whispered something in his ear. Upon hearing it, the examiner was extremely surprised. He couldn't believe the young man had gone from level 4 to 6 in less than a day. At that moment, the Combat Academy's priest commander appeared and declared that the test could begin immediately. If Tsuyoshi passed, he would earn the right to access the Beastman Academy's skill vault. The exam was simple. The candidate had to destroy a stone slab with a single punch. The examiner demonstrated the test by partially breaking the stone to show how it was done. After that, Tsuyoshi got ready. He channeled 50% of his energy into his arm and, with a direct strike, completely shattered the stone. The impact was so great that everyone was surprised. Even so, the instructor said that Tsuyoshi had failed. He claimed that, since he had his back turned at the moment of impact, he hadn't seen the strike and assumed the final crack might have been caused by his own demonstration. He recorded it as a failure, saying the protagonist had only used borrowed power. Not understanding the decision, Tsuyoshi asked what the next plan for the exam was. The examiner then took him to the next test, bending iron bars. It was a traditional strength test. The participant had to bend an extremely tough bar using only brute strength. Tsuyoshi completed the task with ease, bending the metal as if it were paper. Even so, the evaluators failed him again, claiming that the iron wasn't suitable for the test. Finally, they decided to try a much simpler method, arm wrestling. He had to hold out for 10 seconds against the Academy's strongest warrior. If he managed to do that, he would pass. Without difficulty, Tsuyoshi easily defeated his opponent. After completing the 3 tests, it became clear there was no way to deny his approval. The orcs, though displeased, admitted the result. As promised, the orc who had humiliated Sakura bowed before her and apologized. She was quite embarrassed by the gesture and said they shouldn't worry about it. But Tsuyoshi corrected her, saying she didn't need to be so reserved. It was fair for the orc to apologize, and she should accept it. After that, they were led to the entrance of the skill vault. There, Tsuyoshi could choose only one skill at a time, which he found rather ridiculous. There were strict rules in that place. As soon as he entered, he would have 3 minutes to find a skill of his choice. If he took longer, he would be automatically expelled. The vault was protected by high-level sorcerers and mages, with several seals and barriers in place. As soon as he entered, the countdown started immediately. He saw a shelf full of stored skills. It was also the first time Sakura, the hybrid girl, had entered such a vault. While observing the shelves, Tsuyoshi considered using his absolute duplication skill, but was still struggling to find something that suited him. He came across plus a shield impact skill, but was disappointed to see it was useless for his combat style since he didn't use shields. Sakura, meanwhile, found a skill called Wind Step, meant for archers. That didn't help the protagonist either. He continued searching the shelves for something more useful. Eventually, he found a counterattack skill that seemed to match his fighting style. Even so, he wanted to keep searching, but he realized he only had 1 minute left. He started to worry, feeling he was being inefficient. Determined to save time, he used 1 second of the Divine King's hammer's power to destroy all the protective seals at once. The impact was so intense that the seals were instantly shattered. After activating his ability for just 1 second, Tsuyoshi had only 50 seconds left to analyze the scrolls in front of him. Suddenly, a flood of information began to bombard his mind. Sakura grew concerned, realizing he was absorbing too much knowledge at once. Tsuyoshi felt as if his brain were splitting in two, but he didn't care about the pain. All he wanted was to find the skill that best suited him. Time was moving quickly, making him even more anxious. In the middle of the search, he found something that caught his attention and asked Sakura to grab a specific scroll on the lower shelf in the deepest corridor, the third from the top. At that moment, only 20 seconds remained. Even so, Sakura managed to get the fragmented scroll in time. Unlike regular scrolls, fragmented ones didn't require the user to collect the other pieces to use them. With no time left, they had to leave immediately. Tsuyoshi carried Sakura in his arms and escaped at the very last second. Outside, the examiner watched everything with suspicion. He couldn't understand why Tsuyoshi had chosen a fragmented scroll. What he had picked was Chain Lightning Fall, a powerful combat spell that summons an electric current. This current hits up to 3 different targets, dealing lightning damage. It was a versatile skill, suitable for both warriors and mages. The priest explained that, according to old reports, in the last 1,000 years, almost no one had tried to learn a fragmented skill. The reason was clear. The ability was split into 6 volumes, but only 3 had been found so far. Finding the remaining volumes without any clues was practically impossible for someone like a mere orc. He also revealed that many beastmen had tried to master this ability in the past, but ended up dying horribly. As they leveled up, their bodies couldn't withstand the technique's energy and simply exploded. He added that 1,000 years ago, the most powerful Beastman King, known as the Divine King, was the last one to master this technique. He was the bearer of a sacred artifact called the Divine King's Hammer, and this was the only skill the kingdom had left behind. Even with these revelations, Tsuyoshi didn't care much. He believed the skill was perfect for him, even if the Divine King himself had once abandoned it. Without hesitation, he decided to move forward. Before Sakura could leave, the priest recognized her. He knew she was the hybrid who should have been executed. He wanted to understand how she was still alive and why she was helping a human. He suspected that Tsuyoshi still didn't know her true identity, so he asked if she intended to sacrifice him. Sakura, showing no concern, simply replied that it was none of his business. Later at the inn, Tsuyoshi, who had used the Divine King's hammer skill, had to take a healing potion prepared by Sakura. However, he noticed that she was acting strangely. She tried to cover it up by saying she was just tired, but he was still curious, since she was next on the execution list. Trying to change the subject, Sakura asked not to talk about unpleasant things and wanted to know if he had studied the rest of the scroll. Tsuyoshi had already memorized the contents. Although the old beastman had said strange things, everything seemed perfect to him. The thunder chain required a strong body, and he believed he had the strongest body so far. Before continuing in that world, he decided to return to his own. Now that he had mastered the new ability, he felt ready to face the 3 enemies waiting for him. He returned at level 6 and equipped with the Fox Beastman set. Without wasting time, he used his skill, which still had half effectiveness, against the 3 opponents. All of them were paralyzed by the impact. Then he killed the first member of the Crazy Wolf Gang, named Gaia. The second, a furious bald man, threw several bombs in his direction. The explosions were intense, and the enemy believed he had won. However, even with all that power, Tsuyoshi came out unharmed. After defeating the enemies, he found a mysterious bag and became curious. Inside it was a dimensional ring, a rare item that allowed objects to be stored in an alternate space, the size of which varied according to the user's level. Tsuyoshi was very pleased with the find. He knew that ordinary heroes could hardly ever get their hands on something like that. Besides being expensive, it was hard to find even on the market. He tested the ring right away and saw that it worked perfectly. When the hero's security forces arrived, he took the opportunity to leave as quickly as possible. Soon after, he received an unexpected call. It was Lily, his high school teacher. Lily, Tsuyoshi's high school teacher, got in touch with him and expressed her concern. She said he hadn't been going to school, even though winter break had already passed its first week. She understood he might be thinking of dropping out for his sister's sake and acknowledged that the family's financial situation could be influencing his decision. Still, as a teacher, she didn't want to see one of her students give up on school. Tsuyoshi thanked her for the concern and admitted that money wasn't the only issue. In fact, he had suffered a lot at school, constantly mistreated. The teacher tried to encourage him, saying he was a strong boy and shouldn't run from his problems. She insisted he continue his studies and do his best, both for himself and for his sister. Moved by her words, Tsuyoshi ended up convinced. The next day, he would return to school. Meanwhile, the leader of the crazy wolf gang was suspicious of everything that had happened. 3 of his men had been killed by an unknown hero, and their items had been looted. Among the stolen objects was the dimensional ring, a special item with tracking magic. Because of that, he knew exactly where the ring, and whoever took it, was. Furious about being challenged and having his gang robbed, the boss ordered all his thugs to recover what was lost. The next morning, Tsuyoshi was walking with his sister, Karina, who used support gear to help her walk. He worried about her condition, but as long as she walked slowly, everything would be fine. When she learned her brother was going back to school, Karina insisted on going too. The gear had been bought with the money Tsuyoshi stole from the 3 gang members. But now, he didn't have a single coin left. Even so, he decided not to sell the dimensional ring, knowing he would still have many opportunities as a hero. When they arrived at school, Karina went to her class. 2 girls noticed her, and one of them, with black hair, began planning to bully her for no reason other than cruelty. Meanwhile, Tsuyoshi was called in by the principal, who scolded him for abandoning his studies. Lily tried to defend him, explaining that he had his reasons but was now back. In fact, Lily had been paying Tsuyoshi's and his sister's tuition. The boy was grateful and promised to repay every cent. But as expected, returning to school wouldn't be easy. Those who bullied him before were still the same. One of the students threw a paper ball at him, but Tsuyoshi caught it in the air with ease, surprising both of them. Then he said he would meet Rayleigh in the bathroom after class. Rayleigh found it amusing. He thought Tsuyoshi was just acting brave because he'd been away for a while. As soon as the bell rang, Rayleigh followed him to the bathroom. There, he made it clear that he wanted the protection fee. In other words, he wanted to extort him. But Tsuyoshi replied that he wouldn't give a single coin. The boys got angry and tried to attack him. In the past, Tsuyoshi wouldn't have had the courage to fight back, but now things were different. He easily defeated Rayleigh's 2 henchmen, who couldn't understand what was happening. They knew how weak he used to be, and now he seemed like a different person. Soon after, one of the boys opened the door and warned that the boss was nearby, and they needed to escape as fast as possible. Tsuyoshi realized that if he hadn't held back, he could have killed them all easily. Meanwhile, a girl named Haru gave her phone number to Karina. But suddenly, the black-haired girl, named Mina, appeared and slapped Haru on the head. Haru, worried, tried to explain that Karina's body wasn't the same anymore, trying to avoid any confusion with Tsuyoshi's sister. But Mina didn't care. She thought it was strange that Karina had been away from school for so long and wasn't accompanied by any servants. That annoyed her, and she wanted to know how Karina would make it up to her. Karina, trembling, didn't know what to do. Mina then made it clear that she wanted money and asked if Karina's leg devices couldn't be sold. Karina said she couldn't do that because her brother had worked hard to buy those devices for her. They were too important to simply give up. Suddenly, Mina slapped Karina across the face. Before she could do anything else, the teacher appeared, making Mina stop immediately. Even so, she gave a look that made it clear their conversation wasn't over. Karina was in shock over what had just happened. She knew she needed her brother, but also that she couldn't let him run into Mina and the others. So she decided to take a detour through the back gate to avoid any confrontation. When Professor Lily's class ended, she went to talk to Tsuyoshi. She wanted to know if she could help him with anything from the lesson. However, everything was fine for him, and he thanked her for the concern. Right after Lily walked away, one of Rayleigh's henchmen approached, apologized, and asked if they could talk somewhere else. Not suspecting anything, Tsuyoshi decided to follow the boy, but it was an ambush. The group tried to attack him in several ways. Luckily, Tsuyoshi had his supreme physical form activated at 30%, concentrated especially in his arms. He had suspected they were planning something but hadn't imagined they would stoop so low. He easily defeated all the henchmen. He hoped they would learn their lesson because to him, they were nothing but human failures. In the end, he just slapped Rayleigh across the face, knocking him unconscious. He knew that as a hero, he couldn't take the life of a civilian. Meanwhile, Karina was running breathlessly down the hallway, trying to reach the back gate. Her only thought was to get out before Mina appeared. But there was a problem. The stairs made her path difficult, and she had to go slowly. That's when Mina suddenly appeared and without hesitation pushed Karina down the stairs. The fall was harsh, leaving the girl badly hurt, with her nose bleeding. Mina found it amusing and ordered Karina to take off her leg devices. Meanwhile, at the front gate, Tsuyoshi thought it was very strange that his sister hadn't shown up yet. He had passed by her classroom earlier, but they told him she had left. A moment later, a girl approached, asked politely if he was Karina's older brother. Tsuyoshi confirmed and, curious, asked if she knew where Karina was. A little embarrassed, the girl said she had seen Karina heading toward the back gate and suggested he check there. Immediately, Tsuyoshi rushed off. He tried to understand why his sister would take that route. Then he remembered she would have to go down the stairs to get there. That's when he saw the scene that left him in shock. Karina was lying on the ground, clearly injured. But when she saw him, she tried to smile and showed happiness. Tsuyoshi used his divine eye skill to analyze his sister's injuries. She tried to explain, saying she had fallen down the stairs and that it was her own fault. However, his skill showed something else: clear marks of punches, slaps, and kicks. Even so, Karina kept insisting on the lie because she didn't want to worry him. The cane she used had broken during the fall, and she tried to hide the pain. Tsuyoshi understood the situation, but didn't push further. He picked her up in his arms, and the two of them began walking together. After chatting a bit on the way, Tsuyoshi asked Karina to wait for him a moment. He said he had forgotten something inside the school. At that moment, Mina was talking to a blonde guy named Billy, her boyfriend. She was angry because she hadn't managed to take Karina's leg devices. Billy assured her he would take care of it the next day, saying he would rip them off himself. Tsuyoshi was listening to everything from where he stood. He heard the three of them saying horrible things about him and his sister. Faced with that, he decided to act. He entered the room, taking them all by surprise. Billy stared at him and asked who he thought he was to barge in like that. Tsuyoshi then said he had finally figured out how his sister had gotten so hurt. Mina realized he was there for revenge, but Billy mocked the situation, saying it wouldn't be easy to face him. He also claimed Mina was just having fun at Karina's expense. Tsuyoshi, with a firm look, said he couldn't forgive someone who had the cruelty to push a disabled girl down the stairs. Billy tried to punch Tsuyoshi, but Tsuyoshi grabbed his finger effortlessly and injured it. Billy screamed in pain and called him a bastard. Furious, Tsuyoshi made it clear that none of the three would leave that room. Then he closed the door behind him. Mina didn't understand what he intended to do. Her friend Vivian tried to intimidate Tsuyoshi, saying in a threatening tone that he didn't want to mess with them, but he wasn't shaken. Not caring that she was a woman, he slapped her hard across the face. Mina was shocked to see that. Billy, enraged, asked if he really had the guts to do something like that to a woman. But Tsuyoshi replied coldly that he didn't see them as women, but as demons. Billy kept trying to threaten him, and as he started mentioning his father, Tsuyoshi cut him off with a punch to the face, knocking out some teeth. He told him to shut up because he'd deal with him later. Then he grabbed Mina by the neck. Staring straight into her eyes, he made it clear that, as Karina's brother, he would never forgive her for what she did. He ordered her to stay away from his sister and promised that next time he would end her life. After that, he let go of her neck, leaving her gasping. Right after, he picked up a ruler and went over to Billy, hitting him in the face with it. Still injured, Billy warned that Tsuyoshi would regret it because he was the son of the Blue Snake gang leader, a level 10 hero. Tsuyoshi then remembered that he owed money to that very gang. He found it funny how small the world was, as he had now encountered people he hated. Without hesitation, he used his skill and electrocuted Billy. Wounded, Billy crawled to Mina and said he would tell his father everything, swearing that Tsuyoshi would pay for what he had done. Meanwhile, Karina remained worried. Her brother was taking a long time to return. When he finally showed up, he apologized for making her wait and said they could go home now. After making sure Karina was safe, Tsuyoshi headed to another world. He was now flying on the back of a dragon alongside Sakura, and they had arrived in the north. Sakura explained that once they reached the city, they could take on an official mission, but first, he needed to register at the Adventurers Guild. There, they would also find a blacksmith and a tool shop. The city they arrived in was known as the Northern Beastmen City. Tsuyoshi was impressed by the number of different beastmen tribes in that place. At one point, he saw a few humans and became curious, wondering if they were similar to the humans from his own world. Sakura explained that in a large city like that, where there was an active guild, it was common to see various tribes, including humans. There were also rules, such as avoiding deadly fights outside the arena. Interested, Tsuyoshi approached the humans, trying to start a conversation. However, they stepped away as soon as they saw him. A hybrid girl who was with him tried to explain that it was all a misunderstanding, but the humans kept their distance when they saw her. She said that things worked differently in that place, and that one had to act cautiously. Little by little, Tsuyoshi began to understand. No one there liked hybrids, and that was why all the surrounding looks were full of disdain. Next, they went to the guild to register. There, a half-dog woman noticed that there was a human and a hybrid in the group. She found it interesting and asked both of them to fill out their information. This data would be distributed and shared with the entire guild network, allowing them to take on missions and other branches in the future. To complete the registration, it was necessary to receive an adventurer's emblem. The lowest rank was Iron, used by beginners. The higher the rank, the greater the merits and rewards received. The adventurer rankings started with the lowest emblems. The most common was iron, followed by bronze, silver, and finally gold. Only a few gold-ranked adventurers were around the guild, as they usually accepted only missions offered by wealthy individuals. The guild hostess explained that Tsuyoshi also had the option to hide both his level and his emblem if he wished. He decided to try, and to everyone's surprise, managed to conceal both pieces of information on his first attempt. The hostess was impressed, as it was rare for someone to succeed on the first try. At that moment, two huge orcs rudely entered the guild. They had finished a mission and were there to accept another. The hostess mentioned that there was a problem involving a large number of creatures called flesh-eating darkness, which were causing serious losses to local farmers. She also said that a previous group of 3 had taken the mission, but they were badly injured, and one was still missing. Tsuyoshi decided to accept the mission. However, the 2 orcs didn't like his decision. One of them even drew a dagger, showing the intent to attack him, even though fighting inside the guild was strictly forbidden. His companion tried to stop him, telling him not to do anything stupid. The hostess explained that, due to Tsuyoshi's current level, the mission's requester could refuse his help. The orcs took advantage of the situation to provoke him, making offensive remarks about the hybrid girl, Sakura. Then Sakura calmly revealed her own emblem, a golden badge. The hostess was surprised she hadn't been informed of that earlier. Based on Sakura's high rank, she decided to entrust the mission to her, believing the requester would be very pleased. Faced with that, the orcs left without another word. The prejudice had been broken at that moment thanks to Sakura's emblem. Now that the mission was accepted, Tsuyoshi knew he had the chance to level up while helping the local residents. Soon after, the 2 left the guild and began searching for the farm where the creature attacks were happening. On the way, Tsuyoshi mentioned that he didn't know Sakura had a gold emblem. She explained that she had joined the Adventurers Guild when she was still young and had since completed many missions with different groups. Over time, she realized she had already met the requirements to receive the gold badge, so she exchanged her old one for the more advanced rank. At the end of the conversation, the 2 arrived at the farm. It was there that they would face the flesh-eating darkness and begin the next stage of their journey. The creatures known as carnivorous darkness that were in that place were level 10. Upon seeing how many of them there were, Tsuyoshi began to wonder how many people could be inside that place. The hybrid girl explained that, because they were entities of darkness, those creatures were capable of corrupting all living beings around them, making them violent and stronger. Low-level creatures, for example, could even completely lose their intelligence. It was a similar effect to what happened with dark goblins. At that same moment, it was also revealed that those carnivorous darkness creatures had once been simple slimes. Tsuyoshi quickly realized that his chain lightning drop ability would be the best choice to deal with those creatures, so he began preparing it. However, Sakura warned him that he should no longer face that kind of danger alone. That region was very different from the beginner areas, and no matter how prepared he was, a battle of that level could cost him his life. That mission was extremely dangerous, and it wasn't uncommon for an adventurer to die at any moment. Faced with that, Tsuyoshi began to reflect, showing concern. He had no idea how powerful the Beastman King was, nor did he know how much he needed to grow to prove his strength and abilities within a year. For Sakura, it was practically impossible for him to succeed. From the level he was at, meeting the requirements to pass the king's test in just 1 year was, in her view, something unattainable. To begin with, it would already be a great achievement if he managed to stay alive until then. At the very least, he would need to avoid being killed by the Beastman's divine judgment. There was also the level system. The limit for a regular adventurer was level 100. The current Beastman King was at level 92. That was the real problem. As Tsuyoshi's level increased, it would become harder to keep evolving. Even so, he didn't see himself as a common adventurer. After all, he had been able to lift the hammer of the Divine King. That's why he believed it would be possible to reach level 50 in just 1 year. With that goal in mind, Tsuyoshi decided that during that week, he would reach level 12. To do so, he would face one of the carnivorous darkness creatures, and, from that moment on, use the system as efficiently as possible. With the help of the Divine Eye, he discovered that the creature's weak point was the slime core hidden inside their bodies. Determined to win, he began looking for the exact spot where the core was in the huge creature that was approaching. However, that wouldn't be easy. If he were hit, even the body part that came into contact with the monster could be corrupted. After a few attempts, he discovered that the creature's core was located beneath its tongue. Once he knew that, he used his chain lightning drop ability and managed to destroy it completely. 30 minutes after defeating the first creature, almost all of the others had already been eliminated. He achieved that with a bit of help from the thunder oil that Sakura had prepared. This oil could be used to add the thunder attribute to a weapon. They still had 4 vials left, and Tsuyoshi concluded that he should start stocking up on items with that kind of effect. The fire oil they had used earlier had also been very useful. However, he remembered that he was out of money. So he realized that gathering resources would also be part of his journey to become the king of the Beastmen. Next, he decided he would enter the food warehouse to find the boss and quickly finish that mission. But before he could do that, the farm owner appeared. He wanted to know what Tsuyoshi was doing there, entering his property without permission. The man clearly showed dissatisfaction at seeing a hybrid girl invading his land. Beside the farmer were several adventurers who couldn't believe that a hybrid and a human had defeated all those creatures. They were there because of something called Cardiololis. Tsuyoshi had no idea what that was and thought it was all just a misunderstanding. After all, they had received that mission directly from the guild. Not even Sakura knew about this item that was supposedly dropped by the Dark Boss. Since neither of them was informed, the group of adventurers wanted them to stay out of the mission. Those men were interested in the Cardiolus. Tsuyoshi was even more confused by all that discussion about an unknown item, but Sakura explained that he shouldn't give up on the mission because the Cardiolus was extremely valuable. It's a rare item that only appears as a drop from a Dark Boss. Once purified, it can be used to connect with a dark area. Inside those areas, adventurers gain experience 10 times faster than in normal areas. Upon hearing that, Tsuyoshi realized how important that item was. For someone who wanted to level up quickly, the Cardiolus was far too valuable to ignore. That's why he decided he would do everything to get it. When tempers began to flare and it looked like a battle was about to break out, the farm owner stepped in. He didn't want them to fight there on his property and suggested they settle that misunderstanding in a more sensible way. Since one group had received the request directly from the guild and the other through him, he thought it was fair for them to prove their worth in combat against the boss. Whoever defeated the creature would receive the reward. However, the adventurers were not willing to give Sakura and Tsuyoshi the first chance. They wanted to go in first and secure victory. Tsuyoshi, trying to convince them, pretended to be weaker than he actually was. He showed that he was only level 6 and said that if he were defeated, he would give up the mission and the reward. His intention was to seem mediocre so that the other adventurers would believe they could win easily. Everyone started laughing. To them, Tsuyoshi was just a crazy janitor for thinking he could face a boss at level 6. They thought it would be fun to watch him fail, so they let him go first. Tsuyoshi entered the warehouse where the mission boss was hiding. His expression had changed, and his presence felt much more intense. The creature was a larger and more terrifying version of the carnivorous darkness, and it was level 14. Even so, Tsuyoshi believed he could defeat it in just 1 second, as long as he used the hammer of the Divine King. He knew that dark creatures were weak against thunder attacks, and if he failed to finish it in one blow, he would be vulnerable after using all his power. With determination, he launched his attack. Sakura, watching from outside, realized that he had used 100% of his current strength. She knew that after that strike, he would be extremely weakened, so she ran in desperation to check on him. Inside, she found Tsuyoshi collapsed on the ground, thin and frail, as if all his energy had been drained. In one of his hands, he held a glowing stone and wanted to know if that was the Cardiolus everyone had been talking about. Shortly after, the two went to the Adventurers Guild to finalize the mission. The receptionist handed the reward to Sakura, who made a point of saying it wasn't her who had defeated the monsters, but her master. The receptionist thought it must be a joke, especially seeing Tsuyoshi so weak he could barely stand. However, just a few moments later, the weakness effect passed, and Tsuyoshi returned to normal, with his energy fully restored. He asked if Sakura had learned anything else about the Cardiolus. The receptionist explained that the item needed to be purified and infused with magic by a shaman before it could be used. She suggested they look for the city's shamans to the east and said she would write a letter of recommendation. A shaman exam would be held soon, so they could present themselves with that recommendation. Tsuyoshi was surprised to learn that shamans had ranks. They were highly respected figures, even more feared than high-level adventurers. It was said that the medicines made by shamans could directly influence the outcome of battles. There were 6 ranks in total, and high-ranking shamans were considered almost noble among adventurers. Fascinated by all that, Tsuyoshi received the recommendation card from the receptionist. Now, he and Sakura could try to purify the Cardiolus. Then, they went to the Shaman Guild, where many candidates were gathered for the exam. They asked if they could request the purification of the Cardiolus, but the white shaman at the entrance shamans didn't like seeing a human and a hybrid there. He said it wouldn't be possible that day, as it was reserved for the exam, and only shamans could enter. Sakura then showed the recommendation letter from the Adventurers Guild, but the white shaman got even more irritated and repeated that the place was closed to visitors. At that moment, Doug appeared, the president of the Northern Shaman Association. He was a blue-ranked shaman, and his presence commanded immediate respect. Everyone stood at attention as he approached. The white shaman tried to blame Tsuyoshi and Sakura for the disturbance, but Doug listened carefully and understood what was going on. He said he could perform the purification for Tsuyoshi, but not at that moment since the day was reserved for the exam. Since Tsuyoshi was in a hurry, he asked if there was another way to get what he needed. Doug replied that there was indeed another option. Tsuyoshi could take the shaman exam. If he got the highest score, the president himself would take care of the arrangements for the purification. However, there was one condition. Since Tsuyoshi was a warrior, he didn't meet the basic requirements to take the shaman exam. The proposal of taking the shaman exam caught Tsuyoshi's attention, and he immediately wanted to know what the requirements were to participate. As soon as he expressed his interest, everyone around started laughing, finding it absurd that a human like him would even consider becoming a shaman. To them, it was shameful. One of the attendees explained that, to become a shaman, it was necessary to have at least magical aptitude, since the essence of a shaman was to be a magic user. Additionally, the candidate needed to pass two basic tests: potion crafting and item creation. These were essential skills for any shaman. Even so, Tsuyoshi wasn't intimidated and turned to President Doug, asking to borrow his staff. The request surprised everyone, especially Doug himself, but Tsuyoshi explained that he just wanted to prove he met the necessary qualifications. For some reason, the president trusted him, and curious to see what that young human was capable of, handed over his staff without hesitation. With the staff in hand, Tsuyoshi approached the white shaman and, without warning, touched his heart with the tip of the staff. The gesture left everyone stunned, but Tsuyoshi had a reason for it. If his guess was right, he could duplicate the abilities of a magic user and channel them through the staff. When accessing the white shaman's abilities, Tsuyoshi realized he wasn't bound to a single class. Among the options, he chose a skill called Radiant, which created an intense light capable of blinding enemies for 3 seconds. He then began to concentrate energy and release magical waves. He asked Sakura to close her eyes before activating the ability. A powerful flash filled the place. The light was so intense that even the magic shield cast by Doug couldn't contain it. The president was visibly surprised. The brightness increased as Tsuyoshi activated the supreme physical effect, which amplified his magical energy. When the light finally faded, Tsuyoshi turned to Doug and asked if he had passed the qualification exam to become a shaman. Everyone around was in shock. No one knew what to think. For the first time, it seemed that a human had actually passed the test to become a shaman. Tsuyoshi felt uncomfortable with the stares he was receiving. People looked at him as if he were an intruder, but that happened because he was the first human to succeed in such an exam. Sakura then explained that the Romans had a class called pharmacist, similar to that of shamans and elves, which might explain his ease in handling this kind of magic. Despite everything, Doug was still willing to honor the promise he made to Tsuyoshi. However, Eeld's pig appeared, a blue-ranked shaman. He believed that the decision could affect the honor of the beastmen aligned with the shaman faction. Even so, Doug remained very curious about the young man's potential, since he had only seen something similar in the legendary shaman prodigy named Kevin. Eeles disagreed. To him, Tsuyoshi couldn't even compare to Kevin's apprentice, a promising young woman named Fulin. With that, the shaman exam continued, as what had just occurred had only been a demonstration. Now the practical part would begin. The candidates were to position themselves according to the numbers they had received. Tsuyoshi's number was 15, and he went to the marked spot on the floor. Beside him was Fulin, who was surprised to realize he was human. The next stage would be potion crafting. Suddenly, workbenches appeared in front of the participants. Fulin, noticing that Tsuyoshi seemed lost, began mocking him, saying it might be better for him to give up and go home. Right after that, Eeles struck his staff on the ground, and the test officially began. The instruction on the paper was clear. Candidates had to prepare 3 ability potions within 1 hour. But Tsuyoshi was truly confused, not knowing where to start. That's when he realized he wasn't the only one. Other candidates also looked lost. Meanwhile, Fulin began crafting her potions with confidence and speed. Silently, Tsuyoshi started observing her with his divine eye, analyzing every movement, ingredient, and step of the process. After finishing her 3 potions, Fulin noticed she was being watched. Confused, she looked at him, who seemed completely focused. With the information he had gathered just by observing, Tsuyoshi began crafting his own potions. To everyone's surprise, he did it even faster than Fulin. Some people tried to interfere, but Fulin stood up for him. She said that a shaman's common sense was not to hinder others, and that they should let him finish. With tension in the air and time running out, Tsuyoshi decided to use the divine hammer to complete the process and achieve perfect refinement. refinement. At the end of the test, Tsuyoshi had succeeded. His potions were complete and within the requirements. He went to Sakura, tired but satisfied, and said the exams were over. After finishing the exam, Tsuyoshi took Sakura to where the president of the Shaman Association, Doug, was. Now that he had demonstrated his abilities, Tsuyoshi wanted to purify the Cardiololis with his own hands. He was getting ready to leave and proceed with the ritual, but Fulin was clearly upset. She had been defeated by a human, and that deeply wounded her pride. Sakura noticed when Fulin mentioned the name Kevin, revealing that he was her master. That surprised her greatly. Meanwhile, Tsuyoshi also noticed the change in Fulin's behavior, but chose not to say anything. Alongside Sakura, he was led to the ritual room. There were Doug and Eels, who would oversee the process. The president stood before the altar and began the invocation. He called upon the Mother of Earth, the Father of Fire, the Spirit of Water, and the Breath of Wind, the guardians of the four great elements, asking them to answer the call of the shamans and purify the Cardiololis. Eels, observing everything, commented with disdain that Tsuyoshi was being spoiled by receiving a ritual conducted by the president of the association himself. Even so, Doug continued the enchantment until the end, driving his staff into the ground. With that, the stone began to change. The appearance of the Cardiololis transformed completely. Doug explained that there were 3 levels of Cardiololis: low, medium, and high. The stone Tsuyoshi had obtained was of medium grade. This was considered lucky, as the experience gained from fighting in a darkness area with that stone would be significantly high. Based on his own experience, Doug recommended that Tsuyoshi form a party before entering the dark area. According to him, the ideal setup would be a defensive warrior, 2 melee attackers, 2 offensive mages, and a pharmacist. He wanted to know if the young man had already chosen his companions, but Tsuyoshi replied that he had no party. He said that, in fact, it was just him and Sakura, and that he would face the area alone. The answer surprised both Doug and Eels, who were visibly shocked. Even so, the ritual was completed, and the portal to the dark area was opened. Upon entering, Tsuyoshi would have the right to fight 3 times in different locations. Each session would last up to 12 hours. After that, he would be automatically expelled, and the Cardiolus would disintegrate. Moreover, once inside, he could not leave until all the monsters had been defeated, or the time had run out. If he died in there, his body would be removed from the location. Worried about her master, Sakura gave him several potions to help during the battle. Then Doug offered his own staff as a loan, but Tsuyoshi politely refused. He said he didn't need it, because in the end, he was a warrior. Wielding his sword, he entered the portal. The place he found was called the Dark Forest. More specifically, the dark area of the Dark Forest. He would have up to 12 hours to clear all the monsters, and could repeat the process 2 more times. Right away, he was attacked by shadow wolves. They were level 10. Wasting no time, Tsuyoshi activated his supreme body skill, combining it with the Thunderfall chain technique. With that, he managed to defeat several wolves at once. But the battle was not that simple. The remaining wolves showed resistance, and Tsuyoshi had to push himself even harder. When he finally had a moment to breathe, he realized his energy was depleted. The supreme body skill consumed a lot of stamina. Fortunately, thanks to the potions Sakura had given him, he was able to recover and move forward. As he fought, he began to grow impatient. He wanted to reach level 7 as quickly as possible. That was when he came across a massive door. He felt that this was the place where the area boss was hiding. However, he decided to wait until his health was fully restored before entering. Once he had recovered, he crossed the door. He felt a familiar vibration in the air, similar to the carnivorous darkness he had faced before, but something was different. The intimidation was greater. With that, he was certain this was the boss's lair. Soon, a sinister creature capable of cutting through everything with darkness appeared before him. It was the boss of that area and was level 14. With black chains, the creature began attacking, trying to strike Tsuyoshi with impressive speed and power. The young warrior tried to hold his ground, but the enemy's abilities were powerful. All he could do at the moment was block the blows and look for an opening to counterattack. Tsuyoshi ended up being hit by an attack from the dark area boss. The skill used against him was called Tremble Slow and caused the body to become paralyzed for a few moments. However, even in desperation, Tsuyoshi managed to react in time. He used the power of his ring and defended himself from the effect, narrowly escaping danger. Surprised, the darkness boss acknowledged that this human was truly strong. He was impressed by his presence, and even more shocked to see his skill had been broken. That was when Tsuyoshi realized something even more shocking. The boss could speak. Despite the situation, the boss tried to explain that darkness was the greatest of all existences, superior to any other known force. Immediately after, he paralyzed Tsuyoshi again and wasted no time attacking once more. Even with difficulty, the protagonist managed to block the attack. He felt that this enemy was truly a powerful opponent. Determined to counterattack, Tsuyoshi used his Thunderfall chain skill, but the boss was quick and managed to dodge easily. In response, the boss launched an even more powerful attack, believing he had defeated the young man. However, he was completely wrong. Tsuyoshi appeared again, now surrounded by a special armor. He had activated a skill called Sacrifice. This power, obtained from the Darkness boss himself, allowed all negative effects to be removed from the body and granted a temporary massive strength boost. The fact that a human was using a dark skill left the boss deeply confused. He couldn't understand how that was possible. To Tsuyoshi, it didn't seem like a big deal. He took advantage of the moment of surprise and attacked with all his strength. The blow was so powerful that he managed to defeat the dark area boss. After the victory, the protagonist felt his whole body aching. The sacrifice skill indeed provided great power, but came at a high cost. He could barely stand and felt like he could pass out at any moment. Even so, he noticed he had obtained the boss's weapon. Curious, he went to analyze it. It was the Bloody Mist Saw sword, a weapon with passives and abilities related to bleeding effects. Right after, he reset his progress and finally reached level 7. After reflecting on the use of the sacrifice skill, Tsuyoshi concluded that it was dangerous. The damage caused to the body didn't go away, and he knew he would need to improve his physical conditioning before things got out of control. For him, becoming stronger had no price. He was willing to endure any pain for it, so he resumed his journey, feeling guilty for making Sakura wait so long. On the other side of the portal, Sakura, President Doug, and Eels were anxious. They discussed the possibility that the protagonist was already dead, as he was taking too long. Suddenly, a loud rumble echoed through the place. A silhouette appeared at the portal. It was Tsuyoshi, injured but still conscious. He apologized for the delay. He explained that he had completed the process 3 times, and because of that, received a bonus in experience. This allowed him to level up 3 times at once, reaching level 9. His body, however, was in terrible condition. Without wasting time, the shamans began treating him. After the initial treatment, Doug explained that most of the boy's muscles and nerves had been severely damaged. He considered it a miracle that Tsuyoshi was still alive. Even so, after being healed, Tsuyoshi said he was feeling fine. Seeing all of this, Elis felt ashamed. He hadn't believed the boy was capable of such a feat, and decided to apologize. But Tsuyoshi didn't mind. He preferred to avoid conflict and moved on. Elis had used a reflex technique that aided in healing, which also helped greatly during the process. Despite seeming recovered, the protagonist's body was still in critical condition. He needed to begin full treatment as soon as possible. If he continued to push his body like that, he could die. It was as if he had used a forbidden magic that shouldn't be cast repeatedly. If he kept going, the damage might compromise his future growth. He began to realize that the sacrifice skill was starting to affect his mind in strange ways. Soon after, he started having dark visions, as if something evil was trying to approach him. This left him quite confused. To help, President Doug gave him some special potions. He said that it was Kevin's favorite medicine and would be very useful in helping Tsuyoshi recover his body. However, he explained that ideally, Tsuyoshi should meet Kevin in person. If Tsuyoshi demonstrated talent, he might even become Kevin's apprentice, who was one of the greatest medical experts on that continent. He was one of the few who had mastered the legendary law of ruin. In that world, there were laws that governed the elements of the earth and sky. When magic was used based on those laws, its power became immeasurable. That's why this type of spell was known as forbidden ruin magic. For shamans, it was essential to improve the quality and effectiveness of the potions they refined, and these laws could help with that. However, the laws of the earth and sky were violent and unpredictable. Some even seemed to have a will of their own. There were 12 laws in total, scattered across unexplored regions. Even if someone found them, it would require proper training and specific abilities to master them. The reason Kevin was called a genius was simple. He had mastered the 12th law, known as the Law of Great Winds. This achievement placed him among the few capable of performing impressive feats, such as healing deep and nearly irreversible wounds. Because of that, there was hope he could help Tsuyoshi, whose body was in critical condition after his recent battles. Knowing this, President Doug prepared a letter of recommendation for Tsuyoshi. He also gathered some rare medicines that could be used as trade items, making a potential conversation with Kevin easier. Thus, the young protagonist set out alongside Sakura, determined to find him. Sakura had already obtained information on Kevin's location, but the journey there would be long and dangerous. For that reason, Tsuyoshi would have the opportunity to level up while making his way. However, to face this journey, he would need a group. So, Sakura took him to a mission hub, where several adventurers were waiting for new opportunities or recruiting members for their teams. In this busy place, a warrior was loudly announcing that he was looking for someone at level 15 to complete his team. While everyone listened, Tsuyoshi, who was only level 9, approached and asked if he could join. The adventurer was visibly irritated by the boy's level, as it didn't match what he was looking for. Before any discussion could start, the mission gates opened and the adventurers rushed in to not miss the chance. Given the urgency, the group's captain captain, realizing they needed more people, decided to give Tsuyoshi a chance. They had barely started the mission when they encountered a powerful creature, a level 16 forest rhinoceros. While the group hid and tried to plan an attack, Tsuyoshi acted on his own. He used his Thunderfall chain skill and, with just one blow, defeated the rhinoceros. Everyone was shocked by what they had just witnessed. After the fight, they continued the mission. Even though they were standard missions, Tsuyoshi realized nothing compared to the difficulty of the darkness area, where enemies were stronger and the experience gain was much higher. Along the way, a new challenge emerged. A giant tree-shaped monster appeared before them. It was also level 16. Using his divine eye, Tsuyoshi saw that the creature could drop a rare item called Blood Rose, a valuable medicine. He thought it would make a good gift for Kevin. Before facing the monster, the group decided to rest around a campfire. It was at that moment that the team leader named Victor started talking to Tsuyoshi. He explained that each region of the world had its own mission ranking system. Some mission points were fixed, while others disappeared over time. The rankings recorded not only team completion data, but also marked which groups completed missions first or had the best performances, granting bonuses and increasing the fame of those involved. Although it seemed that the group had formed by chance, the truth was different. Victor was part of the Guide of Q, a group formed by 15 pioneers known as the Great Goat Group. The founder and captain of the guild was named Harley, and Victor thought Tsuyoshi should meet him, since he showed so much interest in adventure and growth. For Tsuyoshi, joining that group would be a great opportunity to grow and obtain new items. He agreed to join Victor's team, but imposed two conditions. The first was to keep all the initial experience for himself. The second was to get first pick among the reward bonuses. The group agreed. Further ahead, they faced another monster that used vines as weapons. They defeated it using fire. And with that, Tsuyoshi obtained the Blood Rose item he so badly wanted to gift to Kevin. Sakura, seeing the protagonist's progress, was happy that he had already been invited to join a group. She commented that she only managed something similar when she was already at level 30, so it was impressive how far Tsuyoshi had come. She would not continue the journey with him. In case they didn't meet again, they agreed to reunite at the Adventurers Guild. With that, Tsuyoshi set off on his own path, determined to continue his journey and, most importantly, to meet the leader of Group Q. Sakura thought this was the perfect opportunity. She needed to investigate more about the genius known as Kevin. If he had truly mastered the fusion law between earth and wind, her plan to kill him might need some adjustments. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to Captain Harvey. He thought Victor was joking when he mentioned an interesting level 9 boy with 2 extra conditions. However, Victor explained that the young man had obtained the Blood Rose without any trouble and was probably also the one responsible for bringing him there. The protagonist tried to speak with the captain, but was met with disdain from the others. Even so, Victor began to support him, showing that he shouldn't care about the criticism. Determined, Tsuyoshi declared that he was fully confident. He wanted to take command of the mission, assuring that if he were appointed captain, he would personally lead the group to victory. Everyone thought he had lost his mind. But for Tsuyoshi, it was necessary. Being the captain of the mission was the only way to ensure his progress. Captain Harvey, curious to see how far the young man could go, accepted the condition. However, he made it clear that if Tsuyoshi failed, there would be no mercy. They soon arrived at the mission site. Some members of the group expressed dissatisfaction about the leadership change. Despite the pressure, Tsuyoshi remained calm and unfazed. Everyone entered the portal together and were transported to a place known as the Swamp of Darkness. Tsuyoshi already had a plan in mind. He asked the captain if he would receive all the experience from the monsters in that area. For the group, honor was more important. As long as he could clear the first wave of enemies, there would be no issue with him keeping the experience. He then chose to increase the challenge further by selecting hard mode on the mission panel. This frightened the others but would increase his gains. Trying to reassure the team, he activated his divine eye to locate the enemies. Before long, he found swamp crocodiles, all level 18, far above any creature he had faced before. The group began setting up defenses quickly. Tsuyoshi drew his sword and instructed the mages to prepare fire magic. The coordinated attack worked. Several monsters were destroyed at once. In the middle of the chaos, Tsuyoshi used his thunder ability, enhancing the impact with the flames. The captain was impressed. It was hard to believe that a level 9 warrior had defeated 6 enemies so easily. Because of that, he decided to follow the young man's instructions and continue the expedition. 30 minutes later, still within the Swamp of Darkness, Tsuyoshi continued using his divine eye. The skill pointed to an optimized route to the objective. However, he chose to avoid the easy path and go through an area full of powerful enemies. He wanted to gain as much experience as possible. When he informed the group of his decision, they were shocked. They now respected his abilities, but still thought that choice was risky. Not wanting to waste any more time, Tsuyoshi turned and asked everyone to form a defensive formation. He told them to wait for his signal. He dove into the swamp waters and soon identified a monster known as Soul Devourer. The divine eye indicated that this creature was weak against fire. He attacked with such force that the monster's body was torn apart. Realizing there were many others of the same species submerged, Tsuyoshi used his Chain Thunderfall ability. The electric surge traveled through the water and electrocuted the other enemies. When they began to chase him, he gave the signal for the group to act. Everyone charged in with full force. The protagonist's performance was so impressive that the adventurers no longer remembered he was just a level 9 human. Captain Harvey, increasingly impressed, was already thinking of recommending Tsuyoshi to the Guild of Masters as soon as the mission ended. They finally reached the real challenge of the mission, the Swamp Watcher, the region's boss. It was level 18, and both magic and fire would be effective against it. Tsuyoshi had earned the respect of all the adventurers. When he announced that he had a plan, everyone paid attention and was excited, ready to listen and follow his next instructions. Before starting the final battle, Tsuyoshi organized the group. He asked the mages to pair up and prepare their highest impact spells. These would only be cast when he gave the signal. Another part of the group was tasked with using support items, such as those that caused debuffs, poison, or bleeding. This was essential, as the boss had very high HP, and on hard mode, everything became even more difficult. They then entered the red portal, which indicated the mission's hard mode. The different color drew attention, and they were soon transported into the battlefield. The enemy, known as the Swamp Watcher, proved more difficult than expected. The fight was intense, and for 15 minutes the group struggled. In the end, they managed to defeat the boss. Everyone celebrated the victory, and Tsuyoshi finally reached level 10. However, that wasn't the only reward. Because he was the bearer of the Ring of Infinity and had reached level 10, he received a special bonus, the Black Armor Disguise set. He put on the new armor, which was highly flexible and could only be worn by those with the Ring of Infinity. The piece could not be sold or traded, as it was unique. Its appearance changed based on the user's imagination and could also transform to disguise itself as other gear sets. When the protagonist wore the armor, his appearance changed so much that the others didn't even recognize him. He explained he had simply changed clothes. The mission was completed successfully. The total time was 150 minutes and 36 seconds. When they exited the portal, those outside were completely shocked. Tsuyoshi was now the center of attention. His 100% confidence had proven real, and even those who had previously looked down on him now came to apologize. Several guilds began competing to recruit him. Despite that, he chose to stay with Guild Q, the same one that had helped him face the monsters of the Swamp of Darkness. After the mission, he returned to the northern Beastman city, drawing attention with his new armor. His different appearance surprised even those who already knew him. He had promised to meet Sakura at the Adventurers Guild. He wasn't sure if she would be there, but decided to look for her. Upon arriving, he spoke with the guild hostess, who was surprised by his new look. She said Sakura hadn't been there that day. Only 2 orcs who were making a lot of noise. One of the orcs got irritated by the conversation and threatened to attack the guild hostess. Without hesitation, Tsuyoshi defended her, using his supreme physical aspect ability. This angered the orcs, who suggested stepping outside for a fight, as it wasn't the right place. However, the protagonist refused. He wanted to look for Sakura and couldn't waste time on unnecessary fights. The hostess showed concern. If he left, he might be attacked, and inside the guild, he would at least have the guards' protection. Even so, Tsuyoshi wasn't worried and said everything would be fine. At that moment, Captain Harvey appeared, calling him captain and asking what was going on. Everyone was surprised to hear that, especially those who had wanted to fight him. The hostess was also impressed. In a good mood, Tsuyoshi didn't want to drag the situation out. He simply said those two were trying to stir up trouble. With that, the orcs left. Shortly after, Victor approached and asked what had happened. The protagonist explained that Sakura wasn't there, so they should go to Guild Q's conference room. During the meeting, Tsuyoshi said there was no need to keep calling him captain, since the mission was over. The guild master, known only as Q, congratulated everyone for completing the task. Even so, he showed some disdain for Tsuyoshi. Captain Harvey, on the other hand, defended the young man, saying he was an extremely talented human and essential to the mission's success. Some guild members began began raising suspicions about Tsuyoshi, suggesting he might be a spy from another organization. The discussion grew heated until Victor began firmly countering the accusations. Even so, the tension remained. Tired of the situation, the protagonist explained that he was only there because of Harvey. Since he had already fulfilled his role, he decided to leave. Before going, he thanked the captain, saying he had been an honorable companion. Harvey was saddened by the decision, as he believed in the young man's potential and wanted him to stay with the group. As Tsuyoshi exited the conference room, he ran into an old acquaintance. A beastman dog who had previously mocked him was there. However, his attitude was different. He had already apologized in the past and now had a new reason to seek him out. He said his guild had received an extremely difficult request, and the guildmaster wanted someone very strong for the mission. To him, Tsuyoshi was the perfect person for the challenge. Although the situation seemed urgent, what really caught the protagonist's attention was the reward being offered. The beastman explained that the mission was a rescue request for the kidnapped daughter of a very wealthy merchant. The offer seemed too simple, which raised Tsuyoshi's suspicion, but the amount involved was unbelievable. 500 gold coins, enough to support the entire Pace Guild for a full year. With his participation, he would be entitled to half of that amount. Faced with such a generous opportunity, he couldn't resist and accepted immediately, diving headfirst into the mission. Meanwhile, in the guild's conference room, the girl's father, Wenton, expressed his fury. He was outraged because no action had yet been taken about the kidnapping. Angry, he even made threats. The guildmaster tried to explain that they were developing a plan and that the operation would take place the next day, but the explanation only increased the merchant's outrage as he realized nothing had really been done. That was when the beastman arrived, bringing Tsuyoshi. The tension was clear. The guild member practically begged the protagonist, who was still analyzing the mission details. His fear was understandable. If the guild failed and the girl died, Pace's reputation would be ruined, and they would also face heavy compensation claims. While everyone was nervous, Tsuyoshi went straight to the point and stated that the girl would be rescued. Then he proposed a bet to the merchant. If he managed to save the daughter, the reward would double to 1,000 gold coins. Wenton, suspicious, thought he was being treated like a fool, but the protagonist went further. If he failed, he would pay 50,000 gold coins out of his own pocket. Surprised by the boldness, Wenton accepted the proposal. A contract was immediately drawn up and signed. The guildmaster signed it with trembling hands, realizing that the situation, which was already delicate, had become even riskier. As soon as the merchant left, all the guild members began to complain about the madness that had just occurred. That was when President Doug of the Shaman Association appeared. He was visiting and took the opportunity to treat a wound. During the conversation, he discovered that the guild was in a poor financial state. Understanding the situation, he used his abilities to heal the members who needed it. Tsuyoshi kept his confident attitude and greeted Doug, who was surprised to see him there. Still, he trusted in his ability to complete the mission. The Beastman dog commented to the guildmaster that he didn't know the human, and Doug were so familiar with each other. That only reinforced the idea that Tsuyoshi wasn't just anyone. The protagonist soon left to meet with the members who would participate in the rescue. Meanwhile, Doug stayed behind talking with the guildmaster and vice president. However, Tsuyoshi had an additional plan in mind. He asked one of the members to take him to the arena. He didn't want to watch a match, but to join one. His goal was to use the divine selection system to adjust his attributes to the assassin type. The rescue mission required someone stealthy, capable of silently taking down enemies, and the best way to acquire those skills was through combat. In the arena, a cat tribe assassin named Naruto, level 21, was fighting a giant blue orc from the Beastman tribe, also level 21. Naruto emerged victorious and impressed Tsuyoshi with his speed. Because of that, Tsuyoshi decided to challenge him. The crowd began mocking him, calling him a rookie. Even Naruto thought he was crazy for stepping into the arena with no experience in one-on-one combat. However, Tsuyoshi activated his supreme physical aspect ability and also the divine eye, which analyzed the enemy's patterns and weaknesses. When Naruto charged, Tsuyoshi dodged every strike. Even after being hit once, he stayed firm, which surprised Naruto. While fighting, Tsuyoshi began to identify his opponent's abilities. When he found what he needed, he drew his sword and attacked. In just a few moves, he defeated Naruto and won the battle. The system confirmed it. He had now acquired assassin attributes. Even after the fight, he decided the rescue would take place that very night. They went to the fortress where Wenton's daughter was being held. There, Tsuyoshi reflected on the next steps. One of the beastmen from the guild was by his side, talking about several things until he realized the protagonist was no longer there. Using the divine eye, Tsuyoshi was already moving through enemy territory with his black armor disguise activated. The guards started started patrolling after hearing a noise. One of them strayed from the group and was surprised by the protagonist, who drove a kunai into his chest and silently eliminated him. Tsuyoshi then advanced, taking out other enemies along the way as he searched for the next targets. The guild member Pace eventually caught up to him. Further ahead, they encountered traps. Large iron spheres rolled through the path, trying to knock them down. Together, they managed to get past that section, and at the end, came across an area full of enemies. To clear the way, the guild ally Pace decided to draw the henchman's attention using his arrows. The henchman started chasing after Tsuyoshi, but he was already ahead, heading straight for the tent where the girl was hidden. Inside, he finally found her. She was accompanied by a beast man, the leader of the group, who was a wild leopard. As soon as the leopard sensed Tsuyoshi's presence, he attacked fiercely, reacting with aggression. The leopard seemed surprised, thinking Tsuyoshi was not a member of Guild Pace. To the protagonist, it was strange to see a kidnapper treating the girl so kindly. Even so, he explained that he had been sent to rescue the daughter of a wealthy merchant and was officially representing Guild Pace. The wild leopard did not accept losing the girl and attacked with a flying kick, knocking him down brutally. Even injured, Tsuyoshi decided to analyze the enemy's abilities using his divine eye. With the enhanced speed he had inherited from the assassin defeated in the arena, he launched a thunder-type attack against the leopard. The blow was powerful, but not enough to defeat him. During the fight, the girl appeared and called the leopard uncle, asking for an explanation about what was happening. She didn't seem to understand why they were fighting. The leopard explained that he had already spoken to her, telling her to stay quiet in the tent while he was out. It was clear his behavior changed when he was with the little girl. The girl then began to scold Tsuyoshi, saying she didn't think the leopard was a bad person. To her, that place was fun, and the uncle was kind, so she didn't want to be rescued. The protagonist tried to explain that he was only there to save her, and that he himself was not a bad person. When he looked into her eyes, he saw the same expression his sister Karina made when she was angry, which stirred his emotions. Despite the confusion, the leopard decided to put the girl to bed before continuing the conversation. After she fell asleep, Tsuyoshi wanted to understand what was really happening and why the girl seemed so attached to the kidnapper. The leopard then revealed the truth. He worked for Wenton and was part of a kind of secret gang. That left the protagonist shocked, as he couldn't understand the reason behind kidnapping his own daughter. However, the leopard explained that everything was a money scheme. Wenton made ransom requests in the girl's name and demanded extremely high amounts from the guilds. No ordinary adventurer wanted to get involved with such dangerous warriors, and the place was filled with traps and mechanisms built by Wenton himself, all premeditated to prevent any rescue attempt. The most shocking part was that the girl wasn't even Wenton's real daughter. He had stolen her when she was just a newborn and raised her solely for this kind of scheme. In truth, the one who had raised the girl since she was little was the wild leopard himself, which explained the bond between them. He couldn't betray Wenton because, in the past, he had gone hungry and lived on the streets. It was Wenton who gave him shelter, clothes, and training. Faced with that, Tsuyoshi turned his back and said the leopard should run away and take the girl with him, offering her a new life. Then he told one of the members of Guild Pace to return and inform the president that the mission had been a success. Meanwhile, Tsuyoshi would go after Wenton. He appeared at Wenton's house, determined to end things once and for all. When the merchant saw him, he started begging for mercy, but it was too late. While Wenton counted coins, thinking he was safe, the protagonist had already eliminated all of his subordinates. He demanded that Wenton send 50,000 gold coins to the guild, saying the girl was now in a safe place, and making it clear that he knew all about the fake rescue. Wenton, desperate, tried to bribe the protagonist by offering 50% of the profits, but Tsuyoshi wasn't someone who could be bought. He didn't tolerate that kind of injustice. Without hesitation, he took Wenton's life, bringing the story to a definitive end. The next day, Wenton's body was found in his home, causing a stir. Among the onlookers was Narado, who analyzed the scene and suspected that Tsuyoshi was the one responsible. For him, this was the perfect opportunity to report the protagonist and regain his place in the Assassin's Guild. He believed this could be his redemption. Meanwhile, Tsuyoshi delivered a chest full of gold to Guild Pace, impressing everyone. Soon, news of Wenton's death arrived, and the guild members realized that if it weren't for the recovery of the gold, they wouldn't have received the reward. The protagonist, however, didn't care about the recognition. The mission was complete and he had leveled up. With the 2,500 gold coins he received, Tsuyoshi decided to do something different. He donated everything to homeless children and struggling families, showing that his motivation went beyond the reward. After that, he left the guild. Now that he was level 11, and had completed the mission, it was time to return to the Adventurers Guild. He needed to reunite with Sakura. At that moment, a crowd was gathered in one of the busy areas of the city, and Tsuyoshi wondered what was going on. As he approached, he saw that the commotion involved Sakura. A refined woman, the wife of the president of the Northern Beastman Trade Company, was arguing with her. The woman accused Sakura of having deliberately tripped her son. Sakura, trying to remain calm, explained that she had just been standing there, waiting for someone. However, before anything could be clarified, the woman, filled with rage, slapped the hybrid girl across the face. Caught off guard, Sakura fell to the ground, surprised and hurt. Seeing that, Tsuyoshi didn't hesitate. With a quick jump, he landed a precise kick to the woman's face, stopping her from doing anything worse. To him, it didn't matter who that woman was. If she hurt others with arrogance, she would face the consequences of her actions. Meanwhile, Naruto arrived at the Assassin's Guild and was threatened by other members. Even so, he said he had valuable information and wanted to negotiate in exchange for special conditions. At the same time, the woman struck by Tsuyoshi, furious after being hit, vowed revenge and promised to kill them both. After the confrontation, Tsuyoshi helped Sakura to her feet and explained to the guard that he had acted in self-defense. It was the woman and her son who had started the whole mess. Coincidentally, some members of Guild Q were nearby. They recognized the protagonist and were impressed that he had completed yet another mission, this time in the name of Guild Pace. Tsuyoshi briefly explained that he had gotten involved in the situation because his companion had been assaulted by the wife of the trade company president. The members of Guild Q asked how they could help him. The guard then clarified that if no one testified on their behalf, the law would require them to be taken into custody, since they were in conflict with someone so influential. At that moment, Tsuyoshi's allies stepped forward, saying they would testify in his favor. The guild's hostess also appeared and declared that she would help clarify what she had witnessed. Faced with this, the president's wife was left speechless, visibly pressured. The guard decided to take her into custody, as there were enough witnesses to confirm her guilt. Before being taken away, she was forced to apologize to Sakura, and although reluctant, she did so quickly. After the incident, Tsuyoshi and Sakura continued on their way, leaving the city. As they walked, Tsuyoshi showed the girl that he had managed to gather 250 gold coins. She was surprised and impressed, but he explained that he intended to use the money to buy new equipment for her. Sakura, however, said he didn't need to spend it all on her and mentioned that in the next city, there was a medium-sized Hall of Light where a famous shaman named Kevin lived. Upon hearing that, Tsuyoshi remembered he needed to find this man. While they talked, smiling and cheerful, the protagonist felt something strange in the air. It was a sensation he couldn't ignore. They were being ambushed. The one responsible was the very man Naruto had spoken with earlier. The invader declared that for skill thieves, the punishment was death. He revealed that they belonged to the Assassin's Guild and were there to claim the protagonist's head. According to them, Naruto had exposed the truth that Tsuyoshi had stolen a special technique from the guild, the ambush technique, during the fight in the arena. Sakura quickly drew her sword, showing a killing intent Tsuyoshi had never felt from her before. She was ready to fight and warned him that these opponents were unlike anything they had faced before. Tsuyoshi then remembered what he had done in the arena, copying his opponent's ability. The ambush technique, according to the assassins, was exclusive to their guild. One of the attackers used a skill called Absolute Darkness, which drastically reduced the victim's vision, allowing for easier stealth attacks. Even so, Tsuyoshi managed to block the first strike. The assassin, surprised, asked what his level was. When he answered that he was level 11, the enemy thought it had to be a joke. However, Tsuyoshi had already activated the Divine Eye to analyze every movement of his opponent. Realizing he was at a disadvantage, the assassin revealed his most powerful form. His appearance became ghostly, a technique reserved for extreme situations. The battle intensified. He managed to wound Tsuyoshi, who, despite the injury, still had a trump card. The protagonist decided to use his ultimate skill, Supreme Physical Aspect, combined with the powerful Divine Hammer, which could only be used for 1 second. Taking advantage of that moment, he launched a direct attack on the assassin. The impact was devastating. Even gravely injured, the enemy didn't fall. Recognizing the protagonist's strength, he admitted he couldn't believe someone with such power was only level 11. In a tone of regret, knowing he couldn't win like that, the assassin began to prepare his final technique, the Death Invocation. During the fight, the wounded enemy looked directly at Tsuyoshi and left a warning. He said that if he were killed there, the protagonist would become a target of the Assassin's Guild. At that moment, the Divine King's Hammer effect wore off, and Tsuyoshi's body fell into extreme exhaustion once more. He could barely move and needed to recover immediately. Quickly, Sakura handed him a potion, which he drank without hesitation. It restored some of his strength. For Sakura, that opponent was clearly a high-ranking member of the Assassin's Guild, and ending the fight quickly had been a wise decision. With the battle over, Tsuyoshi realized he was very close to reaching level 12 in that world. So he decided he would soon return to his own world. He still had unresolved matters there. The last time, he had argued with Mina's group because of the bullies who were threatening his sister Karina. And Mina's boyfriend's father was the deputy leader of the Blue Serpent Gang. He knew he would face problems when he got back. While checking the items left behind by the defeated enemies, Sakura found some rare potions. They were potions that increased experience gain by 45%. Tsuyoshi was excited. With those, he could reach level 12 even before arriving in the city where Kevin lived. Now recovered thanks to the potions, they decided to continue their journey. Along the way, they fought lower-level monsters, defeated a field boss, and even helped a group that had failed a mission. Tsuyoshi, almost alone, completed that group's request and finally reached level 12. They were already close to the city where Kevin lived. When they arrived, they decided to rest at an inn. They got a room, but problems quickly arose. A shaman in a blue cloak appeared with a woman, and when the innkeeper saw him, he simply offered Tsuyoshi's room to him. The innkeeper tried to justify it by saying that this was Vicent, one of Kevin's disciples, and that he was an influential figure around there. Tsuyoshi, however, didn't care at all about the man's title. He demanded that the innkeeper show them to the room they had already reserved. Vicent, trying to maintain his posture, insisted on saying he was an important person. But the disciple's arrogance irritated Tsuyoshi, who lost his patience and slammed him hard to the ground. Full of rage, Vicent shouted that Tsuyoshi would regret it and promised he wouldn't be welcome in Carnio. But the protagonist simply ignored the threat and once again asked the innkeeper to show them their room. Sakura, worried, asked if he wasn't afraid of the fact that Vicent was Kevin's disciple. But Tsuyoshi simply replied that he treated people the same way they treated him. For him, there was no reason to respect someone who treated him with contempt. That night, while Sakura slept, Tsuyoshi took the opportunity to return to his world. He wanted to see his sister. He was happy to be home again and relieved that he hadn't woken Karina. Seeing her sleeping, he remembered everything they had been through. Looking at the equipment that helped the girl walk, he realized that he had protected it with all his strength, even without noticing. He lay down beside her and checked the system. He confirmed that his gear in the other world was still intact. He knew he needed another opportunity to level up. The next day, they were on their way to school. Karina wanted to know what had happened to her brother because he had changed completely from one day to the next. He tried to dodge the subject, saying it was just the haircut and that he had done some exercises. Soon after, he asked her to take care of herself, avoid trouble, and wait for him in the classroom after school. Karina, in turn, was still thinking about the events of the previous day. Suddenly, Mina appeared in their path. Her friend tried to change the subject, but Tsuyoshi made it clear to his sister that no one would bother her anymore. Karina noticed that the girls were acting strangely, as if they were scared. In the classroom, Rayleigh, surrounded by his cronies, said he would not bow to a loser who used to do other people's homework. He was clearly referring to the protagonist. However, when Tsuyoshi entered, everyone was shocked by his appearance. The difference was brutal. He was no longer the fragile boy from before. The teacher entered next and announced that the Future Star Tournament would be happening soon. She wanted to know who intended to register. She explained that the prize that year was extraordinary, 10 million yen. Even some teachers wanted to participate. Upon hearing this, Tsuyoshi became thoughtful. He had borrowed 600,000 yen from the Blue Serpent Gang with extremely high interest. If he won the tournament, he could pay off the debt and even move Karina to an apartment with an elevator. He could also try to get her affiliated with the school's hero organization. He still didn't quite understand how the hero system worked, but he knew that if he got noticed, he might even receive some kind of subsidy. Money in that world was better than the gold coins from the other, and Karina and Tsuyoshi needed resources to survive and build a better life. That's why Tsuyoshi decided to go after the 10 million yen prize and the opportunity to attract the attention of the school's hero association. Without hesitation, he raised his hand and told the teacher he would participate in the tournament. Seeing this, Rayleigh started mocking him, saying Tsuyoshi shouldn't get excited just because he had won once. He thought the boy had changed, but it seemed he was just delusional. To respond to the provocation, Tsuyoshi proposed a bet. If he lost, Rayleigh could do whatever he wanted, but if he won, it would be better if everyone stopped picking on him. Since the whole class would be witness, Rayleigh ended up accepting. The teacher explained there would be a preliminary test before the tournament and said she would submit Tsuyoshi's name on the registration form. Then, he went to Karina's classroom and informed her about the tournament. She simply encouraged him and wished her brother good luck. Meanwhile, Mina was talking to Billy. His father had connections with the hero classes of other schools, so that tournament would be a good chance to teach Tsuyoshi a lesson. In the principal's office, the news that a student from the regular class had enrolled caused concern. The principal realized it was Tsukishiro Tsuyoshi and mentioned it to his secretary, who was shocked by the situation. In the preparation area for the preliminary test, several semi-heroes were already gathered. Semi-heroes were young people with innate talents, placed directly into the high school hero class, and granted some privileges. They competed with pride, representing their schools. The teacher in charge of the test found it strange to see a student from the regular class participating in the process. Tsuyoshi's presence ended up drawing everyone's attention, including in the observation room, where Suzuki, the president of the school's Hero Association, was also monitoring the test. The test began as announced. Everyone was to form groups and enter the simulators. There were 3 machines available, all basic level. They simulated combat in E and F-class caves, but the participants would probably be classified in the F-class. Tsuyoshi, however, didn't know that it was necessary to form groups. He thought it would be just a simple afternoon test. Given that, he decided to take the test alone. Soon, everyone began entering the simulators and were impressed with the realism of the experience. Basic equipment was provided to each participant within the simulation. When the phase ended, the supervising teacher congratulated the groups, as all had passed. Then it was the regular class students' turn. The teacher made it clear that he could give up at any time. Some began mocking Tsuyoshi, as they didn't know he was also a hero, but he was already prepared. He had his own equipment and a defined class. Inside the simulation, he easily defeated several level 1 monsters. Since Karina was waiting, he wanted to finish quickly. Everything there seemed too easy for him. In just 6 minutes, he reached the phase boss, a level 3 giant rabbit. With extreme ease, he cleared the entire simulation in under 10 minutes. The control panel registered a data error, indicating that his abilities were far above the intended difficulty. At that moment, Tsuyoshi saw that a simulation of a Class D cave was available. Although he thought passing the Class F would be enough, he decided to take on the new challenge. Outside, everyone began to think he had died, since he still hadn't come out. The teacher started to become suspicious, as 12 minutes had already passed, an unusual time for an average student. In the observation room, the president was impressed with the performance of someone from the regular class, and realized there was something special about Tsuyoshi. When he finally came out of the machine, Tsuyoshi had achieved a perfect score in both the Class F and D simulations. Everyone was shocked, as he clearly had the level of someone in the hero class. But for him, the score didn't matter. He just wanted to secure his place in the tournament and run to pick up his little sister who was waiting for him. The president then approached him, curious to know what the final boss of the Class D simulation was like. Tsuyoshi explained that it was a level 6 dark wolf. It was fast but very weak. With a few cuts, he defeated it easily. Right after, he said he was leaving to pick up his sister. The president, observing everything, realized that Tsuyoshi wasn't just a hidden genius, but a true monster, and he wanted to recruit him for the Hero Association as soon as possible. In the next event, all students had to register the participants from their schools before the meeting at the arena. The practical ability test would begin soon, and everyone was instructed to head to the testing area. Tsuyoshi didn't quite understand, as he thought the tournament would start right away. However, the objective was to show minimal movement while maximizing power. Body movement data and strength scores would be displayed in real time on the screen. The first to step up was a student from Sawahira High. His score wasn't impressive, and most of the other participants also achieved average results. The scores seemed repetitive, with no real standout. However, soon it was the turn of a student from Kurozu High, who appeared very confident. He managed to score 89 points in the body evaluation and 92 in the power test, which surprised everyone. It was the highest score up to that point. After him, it was Tsuyoshi's turn. Karina was present and had given her brother one of the special devices to use during the test. Calmly, Tsuyoshi activated his ultimate body aspect ability, channeling all the power into a single index finger. When he executed the movement, a shockwave rippled through the area, leaving everyone around alarmed. The impact was so intense that the machine couldn't register the score properly. The system simply froze, indicating that the data had been exceeded. Seeing this, Tsuyoshi realized he had probably overdone it. The measurement ball was launched with such force that it detached from the equipment. No one knew exactly what that meant or how they should react. Technicians quickly began inspecting the equipment to check for any malfunction. Suzuki, the president of the Hero Association, approached Tsuyoshi and asked to see his hands. Observing the calluses and scars, he wanted to understand their origin. Tsuyoshi explained that he had been working part-time jobs for over 10 years to support himself and his sister. This revelation visibly shook the president. The technician in charge of the machine confirmed that there was no system error. After recovering the data, it was revealed that both of Tsuyoshi's metrics, physical physical strength and power, had reached the maximum score of 100 points. Many present found that impossible and began accusing him of cheating. However, Suzuki declared, on behalf of the School Hero Association, that the score was legitimate and that there was no sign of manipulation. This left everyone even more shocked. Among those present was a man who was a business partner of Billy's father, the leader of the Blue Serpent Gang. He was there at Billy's request. With the revelation of the results, many students became outraged, claiming it was impossible for someone from the regular class to achieve such a high score without some kind of interference. To prove the data's authenticity, the organizers displayed Tsuyoshi's recorded results from Seishin High on the big screen. Karina was speechless upon seeing her brother's score. She felt pride and admiration. On the other hand, Mina was furious. She couldn't accept that Tsuyoshi was standing out so much. Frustrated, she began bombarding Billy with messages, trying to find a way to handle the situation. Shortly after, the tournament host announced that each school could form their groups for the next round, which would be a team competition. Since the rules required at least 3 participants per team, Tsuyoshi was informed that he couldn't join the second match. He understood completely, as he was there representing his school alone. Because of that, Seishin High temporarily took first place with just 10 points. Billy's father's business partner was disappointed, as he had planned to use Tsuyoshi as a target in the second match. Still, he saw that there was a chance. They just had to wait for the next round and try to beat him. As the competition continued, each group entered the simulator one at a time. Tsuyoshi grew thoughtful, knowing that the title of Supreme Star would be awarded to the group with the highest final score. Additionally, the player with the best performance would be named MVP, something he aimed for. If he could stand out in the individual rounds, the 10 million yen prize would be within his reach. The schools kept giving their best. The competition was already halfway through, and as expected, the Kurozu High group led with a strong advantage. At one point, a Seishin High group had an exhausted member. Noticing this, they remembered Tsuyoshi was available and invited him to complete the team. Since 3 participants were required, they couldn't afford to miss the opportunity. Tsuyoshi entered the portal with the group. Upon seeing a large number of enemies falling from the sky, he asked his teammates to close their eyes. He then summoned his cold black light sword and, using his ultimate body aspect ability, wiped out hundreds of enemies in a single strike. The impact was so overwhelming that the final data showed the defeat of 330 monsters, which left everyone in shock. With the round concluded, Tsuyoshi's group ranked first. Impressed, Suzuki asked how they had managed to defeat so many monsters at once. The students answered honestly, saying they didn't exactly know what had happened. They had simply followed Tsuyoshi's request to close their eyes. Once again, accusations of cheating arose. A new inspection was carried out. Even with the sudden rise in scores, the results were considered legitimate. It was hard to believe, but there was no indication of any fraud. The next trial in the tournament was the long jump. As usual, Tsuyoshi activated his ultimate body reinforcement ability, concentrating all his strength in his leg. The force of the jump was so powerful that the ground cracked beneath his feet. As a result, he easily outperformed all the other competitors, securing first place. In the short-distance race, Tsuyoshi also stood out, crossing the finish line with an impressive lead. Immediately afterward, in the discus throw, he won again without much difficulty. Meanwhile, at the hallway entrance, Billy was watching everything with his phone in hand, completely confused. He couldn't understand why Boniface was unable to do anything against Tsuyoshi. The men working with Billy's father were prepared to interfere. They possessed a dangerous and illegal item from the black market called P2P mental interference. This device was extremely expensive and emitted psychic waves that directly affected the target's brain. For this occasion, it had been adjusted to operate at only 10% of its original power, which theoretically made its use safe in a school environment. Next came the final event of the day, the traditional tug of war, one of the audience's favorite challenges. In this competition, 3 representatives from each school pulled a giant rope, with the goal of lifting a chosen female student to the top of a platform. Once there, the student had to lower her school's flag to secure the victory. Teams began to form, and the host announced that Tsuyoshi would participate in the event. However, no female student had been assigned to partner with him. The announcement asked for a volunteer to step forward to the competition area. Without hesitation, Karina stood up and shouted that she would participate, even though her frail legs might hinder her. At that moment, Mina had a devious idea. She decided to volunteer, not to help, but to sabotage Tsuyoshi. Her intention was to cause confusion. Even if she lost, she would make it seem like it was his fault, not hers. Tired of relying on Billy, she decided to act on her own. Soon the volunteer was announced, and Tsuyoshi, still with his back turned, didn't know who had stepped forward. When he turned around, he was surprised to see Mina right in front of him, saying she was there to help. After the principal left the area, he authorized them to decide between themselves how they would proceed. Tsuyoshi, suspicious, suspicious, changed his expression. He knew Mina might be plotting something. She tried to provoke him, saying no one else would show up and that he should be careful with his actions. The official announcement cut through the tension. The host shouted for all participants to prepare as the final tug of war was about to begin. Mina, with her usual sarcasm, told Tsuyoshi he should work hard to pull her up to the top and secure the victory. Despite her words, she didn't seem to take it seriously. However, she noticed something unexpected. Tsuyoshi didn't respond, didn't show any irritation, and didn't even look at her. He was completely focused, ignoring her provocations. Meanwhile, Boniface, consumed by anger, was determined to stop Tsuyoshi from winning once again. The event was well structured, with assistants ready to act in case any competitor lost strength and dropped the rope. Finally, the tug of war began. Tsuyoshi, holding the rope, found the weight surprisingly light. His legs, empowered by the ultimate physique ability, made everything feel effortless. However, he knew that an explosive performance from the start might raise suspicion, so he decided to gradually increase his pace and secure first place strategically. At that exact moment, Boniface activated the P2P mental interference. A strong wave of psychic shock was released, hitting Tsuyoshi's mind directly. The pain was intense, as if something had pierced his head. It was a dangerous and forbidden effect, capable of causing sharp pain and disorientation. Even in its reduced form, the impact was brutal. All the students were struggling to lift as much weight as possible. Amid the collective effort, one of the students managed to lift a classmate, which made the protagonist decide to act as well. He then activated his ultimate body enhancement skill, focusing all his strength in his arm. Meanwhile, Mina was watching everything with anger. Seeing that he wasn't even showing effort on his face made her even more frustrated. Deep down, she hoped something would go wrong. To make things worse, she decided to quickly increase the tension on the rope. That was when the protagonist noticed the rope beginning to shake. One of the assistants, worried, asked Mina to stop moving so much because it could become dangerous. Mina then looked directly at the protagonist, but he was already staring at her with a gaze full of rage. She sensed that he was about to confront her, and at that moment, she realized there was something about him that made her afraid. His eyes carried a real sense of threat. Frightened, she felt as if he had a thirst for killing. It was then that Boniface decided to activate a special item. When he activated the P2P mental interference, everyone at the scene began to feel intense pain and grabbed their heads. Boniface, who didn't expect to be affected as well, was caught in his own trap and felt the same pain as the others. Tsuyoshi was also affected, but since he was the bearer of the ring, the system automatically activated mental protection that shielded him from most of the impact. Quickly, many students collapsed to the ground from the pain. Some girls who were descending were crying out for help. Even feeling the effects of the item, the protagonist did not let go of Mina. He held her firmly. Then, he activated his ultimate body enhancement skill again, this time focusing the power in his legs. With that, he managed to grab the ropes of all the girls who were at risk. While the others only had headaches, the girls were in real danger, since even the assistants had been affected. The protagonist used all his strength, to the point where his glove tore from the strain. Some people came running to help, but only wanted to pull him off the rope. However, he made it clear that he wouldn't give up. He would hold on until the end. Seeing all that, Mina realized how hard he was trying. Moved by his attitude, she decided to ring the bell for him. Billy was furious with Mina's action, but even so, the protagonist had managed to save the girl. The crowd began to cheer for the victory. Soon, the Blue Serpent gang heard that the protagonist had accomplished the feat, and that his school was now in first place. Faced with that, the gang leader decided it was best to retreat for now, recognizing that Tsuyoshi was beyond their reach at that moment. Meanwhile, an inspector arrived at the school and went to the principal to deliver a report. He informed him that a student had used a dangerous item, the P2P mental interference. The report stated that the one responsible was Boniface from Kurozu High. The president asked for the investigation to continue, as it was still necessary to understand the true motive behind that action. The principal of the protagonist's school began to treat him differently after the incident. However, Tsuyoshi didn't care about that. He just kept his focus. That's when the president of the Hero Association approached and informed the protagonist that, as the champion of the future star, he would receive the cash prize equivalent to 1 U, delivered personally at the mansion of the #1 hero, located in a privileged area. Meanwhile, Mina wasn't as lucky. Billy grabbed her as if she were trash, demanding to know why she had rung the bell and helped the protagonist win. He pushed her against the wall and asked if she had forgotten how Tsuyoshi had humiliated them. To him, both Mina and Boniface were useless. Even afraid, Mina made it clear that the protagonist had saved her life and the lives of others too. If not for him, she would probably be injured or dead. Outraged by Billy's insensitivity, she slapped him in the face. When he tried to strike back, Tsuyoshi appeared and grabbed Billy's arm before he could react. With a quick move, Tsuyoshi threw Billy to the ground. Even on the ground, Billy kept threatening, saying he was the son of the Blue Serpent gang leader. To Tsuyoshi, that meant nothing. He replied that idiots like him truly had no cure, and without hesitation, he punched him straight in the face. At that moment, a friend of Mina arrived, worried about her. Tsuyoshi then turned his back and asked if Mina still wanted something. She then knelt down and apologized. She said she would never bother his sister Karina again and promised not to hurt anyone else. She also asked Vivian to apologize as well. Later, the protagonist was in the locker room, reflecting on everything that had happened. He was resting a little when Rayleigh's allies showed up. However, instead of looking for trouble with him, Rayleigh's allies approached and apologized for having treated him like a mere lackey all that time. After that, the protagonist walked away, but he knew things wouldn't be the same anymore. He was constantly pestered. Everyone seemed to worship him, following him everywhere with noise and cheers, and that was something he truly couldn't stand. While walking, he ended up running into his sister, but before he could talk to her, Mina came running and warned him that Billy and his gang were nearby. Right after that, Billy grabbed Mina and started insulting her as if she were worthless. Rayleigh's allies, who were still following the protagonist, began to tremble at the sight of Billy's gang. Even so, the protagonist remained calm. He told everyone to stay calm and assured them no one needed to get involved. He only asked that they protect his sister. At that moment, he realized he didn't need to hide anything anymore. It was clear to everyone that he was a hero, and now he would show that with his own hands. He activated his full set, prepared for battle, and charged at the gang, striking several enemies at once with great precision and strength. It was clear he was using his ultimate body enhancement skill. Meanwhile, two men watched everything from the top of a building. They carefully analyzed the protagonist's every move. Both were S-rank heroes. The bald one was named Dane from the Final Glory Guild, and the other was Sandor from the Furious Dragon Guild. During the fight, the protagonist threatened Billy by throwing an iron bar to the ground right in front of him. Terrified, Billy panicked and ran away. The protagonist thanked Mina for warning him about the attack in time. Then, noticing the group was still following him, he asked everyone to leave and let him be. Right after, he walked with his sister and commented that everything in life has a good side and a bad side. The attention he had gained could be useful, but it could also bring problems. Not everything was welcome. He took the opportunity to share that. Because they had won the tournament, the president of the school's Hero Association had awarded him a bonus of 10 million yen and a new apartment. His sister, Karina, was surprised to hear that. The protagonist smiled at her reaction. He was happy, especially because she would no longer have to climb stairs every day. He always thought of her with affection, knowing that taking care of her was his responsibility, and he was determined to do it the best way possible. On the way, President Suzuki of the Hero Association appeared and asked if the protagonist had some free time to talk. He wanted to get to know him better and discuss important matters regarding the upcoming Supernova tournament. So, the two of them went to the protagonist's home. Upon arriving, he offered the visitor some tea. Suzuki asked if he and his sister had been living there all this time. The protagonist confirmed, explaining that since their parents died, he and Karina had been living alone in that place. The problem, however, was that she had to climb many stairs every day, which was exhausting due to her condition. The president suggested that they move the very next day to the mansion being given as part of the prize. The place was fully equipped, and the protagonist wouldn't need to worry about anything. Then, Suzuki touched on a sensitive topic. He wanted to understand what had happened to the boy's sister's legs. The protagonist explained the entire situation sincerely, and the president was visibly moved. Suzuki then mentioned that he had heard rumors about the golden elixir of rebirth, which would be auctioned the following month. This rare golden liquid had the ability to restore lost bodily functions. If they could obtain the elixir, there was a chance Karina could walk again. The protagonist was completely surprised by the information. The problem was that to participate in the auction, he needed to have C-rank hero status and raise at least 1 billion yen in capital. That left him disheartened, as he knew that amount was far too high to gather in just 1 month. The president explained that the auction was extremely strict, with entry rules based on status and power. But there was one possibility. If the protagonist managed to place among the top 3 in the Supernova tournament, he could apply for a promotion to rank C. However, when it came to the funds, the president was straightforward. Even as the head of the school association, he couldn't offer much more support. The 10 million yen that had already been awarded was the maximum he could provide. Even so, the protagonist didn't give up. He knew he wasn't someone who cared much about money, but this was a situation where he truly needed it. The question in his mind was, how could he gather 1 billion yen in just 1 month? That's when he remembered Sakura, a girl who made potions. Despite hating their taste, he loved their effects. He knew that even with all the technological capsules available in the modern world, the potions from the other world were unmatched in effectiveness. The president also mentioned that the Supernova tournament was a massive event in which powerful guilds sent their most promising heroes to compete. Hearing that, the protagonist formally asked President Suzuki to authorize his participation in the tournament. Right after their conversation, the protagonist started running, bringing President Suzuki along. He wanted to know as soon as possible where he could register for the Supernova tournament. The two went straight to the headquarters of the Hero Alliance, where registrations were being held. However, when they arrived, the registration officer made it clear that Tsuyoshi did not meet the minimum requirements to participate in the tournament. To be accepted, he needed to be ranked among the top 3 in at least 2 public dungeons. President Suzuki was visibly disappointed. The tournament would begin in just 1 week, and the competition in the public dungeons had become extremely fierce. At the moment, there were 6 public dungeons available, 3 rank C, 2 rank D, and 1 rank B, which was the most difficult of all. Even so, Tsuyoshi wasn't discouraged. He was determined to place among the top 3 in at least 2 of those dungeons before the tournament began. Without wasting time, he used his limitless travel ability and went to the other world. He needed to acquire new formulas and reach level 15 before returning. As soon as he arrived in the city of Carnio, an advanced region in the other world, he remembered that this was where Kevin, the genius alchemist he admired so much, lived. However, he received troubling news. He could only remain in that world for 3 days, as staying longer would cause permanent instability in his connection to the original world. And since he was still at level 12, reaching level 15 would be a difficult task in such a short time. The next morning, after Sakura woke up, the two began walking through the city in search of a practical goal. During their walk, Sakura mentioned that Kevin was organizing a refinement tournament with extremely valuable prizes. The event had attracted young shamans and adventurers, all eager to obtain rare medicine. The tournament's prizes were impressive. Third place would receive the basic potion formula. Second place would win a personal lesson from Kevin, a normal potion formula, and a level-up formula. First place would earn the right to become Kevin's direct disciple, in addition to receiving the basic formula and 2 level-up formulas. The protagonist was excited. That tournament was exactly what he needed. If he could win those formulas, he would be able to reproduce them easily in the original world and recover the billion yen he needed. He told Sakura that he would participate in the tournament and that he would take first place. However, she was confused, as she thought his goal was simply to meet Kevin. For him, it didn't make sense to beg or try to impress him directly. The best way to meet someone like Kevin was by winning the tournament fairly. Even though this would delay Sakura's plans, she understood there was no way to change his mind. Both of them went to the tournament registration counter. There, they found Fulin, who was furious at Tsuyoshi's presence. He didn't recognize her, but she made a point of reminding him that she had lost the shaman exam because of him, ending up in second place. The protagonist simply apologized politely and proceeded to register, ignoring the drama. Right after, he ran into Vysen, who was irritated to see him there. Vysen said he had made sure Tsuyoshi wouldn't stay in Carnio, and now, seeing him in front of him, he felt this was his chance. Without delay, he called his henchmen, 2 powerful beastmen, to surround the protagonist. Fulin, who saw Vysen as her senior, tried to intervene and asked him to stop, but the 2 beastmen were already approaching, and the protagonist understood he could defend himself, considering it a case of self-defense. The situation got worse with the arrival of Gillette, who immediately sided with Vysen. He stated that any enemy of Vysen was also his enemy. Furthermore, he showed strong prejudice against hybrids and promised to be cruel to Sakura, leaving her feeling threatened. To make matters worse, Vysen showed no concern for Fulin at all, which left her truly shaken. After all, she had tried to defend him. Seeing this, the protagonist told Fulin she didn't need to worry. He would put Vysen and Gillette in their place. The battle began. The protagonist attempted a quick attack against Gillette, but he managed to block the strike, though with great difficulty. This surprised Vysen, who didn't expect anyone to confront him so directly. When the protagonist attempted a second attack, a figure appeared and interrupted everything. It was someone respected, who ordered everyone to stop immediately because the tournament was about to begin. Because of this, Vysen had to retreat and took his brother with him. At that moment, Kevin appeared. He was there in person and was clearly disappointed with the young men's behavior. To him, that was a disgrace to the shamans. Kevin was a powerful red shaman, level 36, and highly respected. Vysen tried to justify himself and apologized to the master. However, Fulin took advantage of Kevin's presence to accuse Vysen of having caused all the confusion and harassed her deliberately. Sakura was happy to see that Kevin had finally shown up. His presence had an immediate impact on everyone around. Many began to tremble, especially Vysen, who cried and begged for forgiveness for everything he had done. After ordering everyone to leave, Fulin approached Kevin and explained that she was there to assist the human who had defeated her in the shaman exam. Kevin was surprised to learn that the human was present. The protagonist truly didn't expect to meet him there. To show he wasn't joking, he presented a letter of recommendation signed by President Doug and stated that he was also interested in participating in the refinement tournament. Since it was a recommendation from someone important like Doug, Kevin didn't take the matter lightly and decided to personally accompany young Tsuyoshi. That was when the protagonist realized Sakura had disappeared. Puzzled, he tried to look for her, but there was no sign of her nearby. After reading the letter of recommendation, Kevin learned that Tsuyoshi had been affected by darkness and had been using forbidden elixirs to relieve the symptoms. The goal was to maintain his mental and physical strength under extreme circumstances. The protagonist himself admitted that he had ventured alone into the darkness zone, acknowledging it had been reckless. Upon hearing that the young man faced everything alone, Kevin was impressed. Curious, he asked if the boy had studied potion refinement and if he had a mentor, but Tsuyoshi explained that he had never had a master. Everything he had learned was through instinct, which surprised Kevin even more. To him, that boy had the potential to surpass him. As they walked, Kevin explained that refined potions carry the power of laws and can, in certain cases, completely remove darkness from the body. To begin the process, he showed his refining chamber and asked for a drop of Tsuyoshi's blood, as he needed to examine the state of his body. The exam began, and a trace of darkness was soon identified in the boy's blood. The strangest part was that Tsuyoshi seemed perfectly fine, even with that dark energy still inside inside him. Kevin then warned that simple potions would no longer be enough. It would be necessary to use the power of the laws directly to purify his body. Without wasting time, he summoned a magical rune, marking Tsuyoshi's back. With that, the protagonist began to feel intense pain. As Kevin's power increased, the pain grew stronger. To protect himself, Tsuyoshi activated his final physique, granting him a more powerful internal defense. This unexpected reaction frightened Kevin. There was something strange inside the boy's body, an unknown power that resisted even the force of the laws. That made Kevin believe Tsuyoshi could become a problem in the future. As a precaution, he decided to place a hidden seal on his body. This seal could be activated at any moment and, if necessary, completely destroy the target. After finishing the process, Kevin said everything was fine and claimed to have eliminated all traces of darkness. Tsuyoshi felt better and offered a few gold coins as a reward, but Kevin refused, reminding him that he was there under Doug's recommendation. He also said Tsuyoshi could participate in the refinement tournament as he was, without needing any additional preparation. Soon after, they headed to the main location of the tournament. Fulin was responsible for guiding Tsuyoshi. She had already prepared a special refinement platform just for him, and took the opportunity to give a warning. The blue shamans were extremely cautious, and he couldn't afford to slip up in front of them. At that moment, she announced that the refinement tournament was about to begin. The first test would be an herb exam. A red-skinned participant with an appearance similar to Dabura stood out among the others. His name was Drax, and he was a blue shaman. The test was based on the idea that a great shaman should have excellent judgment. During the preparations, Tsuyoshi purposely bumped into Drax, pretending to be distracted while observing the surrounding. In truth, he was trying to learn and memorize all of his opponent's techniques. Soon after, the host announced the start of the first stage of the tournament, the herb exam, and began explaining the rule. The name of a potion would be announced, and participants would have to identify and collect the correct ingredients within a time limit. Those who failed would be eliminated. The score would be based on the quality of the collected ingredients. Meanwhile, Kevin was talking to Conte, a beastman who was a level 33 red shaman. He mentioned that a human was participating in the tournament, someone who wasn't even a shaman but had defeated his own disciple in the previous exam. This made Kevin even more interested. Tsuyoshi, for his part, was carefully observing the available ingredients. Now he understood why half the participants were eliminated in the very first phase. The baskets contained ingredients for only half the competitors. Since the potions required several different items, it was necessary to choose carefully. Acting on impulse, grabbing random ingredients, or wasting too much time searching would be a fatal mistake. Finally, the host announced the name of the first potion to be produced. Beginner's Refreshing Potion. All the participants rushed to grab the ingredients as fast as possible. Meanwhile, Tsuyoshi activated his divine eye. With it, he identified that the Beginner's Refreshing Potion required 3 ingredients: fire, spirit herb, wood core, and dry vine. He went to the area where the ingredients were located, but the place was crowded. To get the first item, he decided to use his Thunder Ambush Strike. Vincent, who was alert, sensed Tsuyoshi's power approaching. Suddenly, everything around darkened, and the protagonist appeared in front of a beastman, completely startling him. At the last moment, Tsuyoshi canceled the attack and, with the help of the divine eye, quickly grabbed the desired ingredient. Soon after, he found the other 2 ingredients as well, all of the highest possible quality. The evaluators began to examine each participant's selection, checking both the accuracy and the quality of the ingredients. Several competitors were quickly disqualified for simple mistakes. Drax managed to pass, even with only a reasonable score. Vincent, on the other hand, received an impressive grade, 94 out of 100. When it was Tsuyoshi's turn, the measuring device malfunctioned, which was unusual. However, after some adjustments, the final score was revealed, 100 out of 100, surpassing everyone else. The participants and even the evaluators were shocked by the result. One of the evaluators made a point of showing the item used in the evaluation, stating that there had been no calculation error. Kevin, increasingly curious, closely observed all the young man's feats. Then came the second challenge of the tournament. This time, participants had to refine an intermediate invisibility potion. The task required skill and a high consumption of mana. Realizing this, Fulin approached Tsuyoshi, asked if he had forgotten his staff, and, angry at his carelessness, ended up lending him her own staff. The host explained that everyone should take their ingredients and begin the refining process. The time limit to complete it was 30 minutes. The event staff delivered the plates with herbs, and the countdown began. Suddenly, a commotion broke out. One of the participants accused a staff member of tampering with his ingredients, and even broke the plate on the person. Meanwhile, both Drax and Vincent remained calm, as they considered this stage easy. Tsuyoshi, however, hadn't even started yet. Watching from a distance, Conde believed he wouldn't finish in time. 12 minutes had already passed, and Fulin was beginning to get impatient. Without rushing, Tsuyoshi finally began the refining process. While everyone doubted his ability, he remained calm. Drax finished his potion and was the first to complete it. Kevin, curious, asked Vincent to demonstrate his skill as well. Meanwhile, the protagonist carefully watched Vincent's steps using the divine eye, copying everything with precision. Vincent's refining was considered excellent up to that point. However, Tsuyoshi was preparing something even more extraordinary, an S-grade potion, something extremely rare. A supernatural phenomenon began to occur. Tsuyoshi Tsuyoshi's mana, previously weak, became incredibly powerful. This made Vincent uneasy. Drax began to tremble, unable to understand what was happening. Shortly after, using part of the money he earned from the tournament, Tsuyoshi went to the headquarters of the Blue Serpent Gang. Two guards tried to stop him from entering, but he explained that he had business with the group and wanted to speak directly to the boss. The guards asked for his name. Before he could answer, the same guy who had previously been defeated by Tsuyoshi appeared. He told the guards to be quiet and explained that the boss himself had requested to meet the young champion. He then guided Tsuyoshi to the leader of the gang. The leader of the Blue Serpent Gang was a level 24 man who had the same class as Tsuyoshi, warrior. Wasting no time, the protagonist opened his case and showed the 600,000 yen from the loan he had taken, now with the appropriate interest. He wanted the group to check the amount as he was paying everything back. The gang leader was surprised by the gesture and said Tsuyoshi didn't need to be so formal. Then he made a point of introducing him to two important allies, the second in command of the Blue Serpent Gang and also the president of Crazy Wolf. Tsuyoshi carefully observed everyone present and noticed their combat power wasn't bad. However, the Blue Serpent leader noticed that he had assessed everyone's strength at once, just with a glance, and decided to get straight to the point. Both the Blue Serpent Gang and Crazy Wolf wanted to ask the young man for a favor. They wanted to leave the past behind and form an alliance. Tsuyoshi, confused, didn't understand what that meant. They explained that they also wanted to apologize for Billy's rude behavior and that he had already been sent to another city where he would receive proper discipline. They also said that the members of Crazy Wolf had acted disrespectfully, and that's why they were there to apologize once again. They revealed that the spatial ring previously given to him had a tracking spell on it, but it had since been removed, and now Tsuyoshi could use it without concern. Upon hearing this, Tsuyoshi's eyes widened. He now realized how careless he had been by putting the ring on without checking its origin. Even so, he stated that he had already settled things with Billy during the school incident, and whatever punishment was given to him didn't matter. The members of Crazy Wolf had tried to kill him and ended up defeated. For him, the matter was already closed. The gang leader, however, insisted that he accept the money, but Tsuyoshi made it clear that he didn't like owing favors. Paying his debt was something natural. Even so, he wanted to understand the reason behind the sudden change in behavior. He explained that he didn't like the idea of dealing with gangs or guilds. That's when the leader explained that news about Tsuyoshi's achievements in the Future Star Tournament had spread. There was no one influential left who didn't know who he was. President Suzuki was trying to recruit him, and both guilds and gangs wanted to build ties with him. They weren't looking for conflict. They were just smaller groups trying to approach him in a friendly way. Tsuyoshi was surprised. He had no idea his fame had grown so much. After the conversation, he said goodbye and left the place. Everyone expressed a desire to see him again soon. Now it was time to buy ingredients and start refining some potions. He went to the biggest ingredient shop in the region and spoke with the vendor, who treated him with disdain, as if he were just another ordinary customer. He offered access to the basic stock and asked him to pick whatever he needed from there. Tsuyoshi explained that it wasn't enough. He had heard that the shop was the most complete in the region. He handed over a list with 15 ingredients, which left the vendor stunned by the names listed. The man thought it was some kind of joke, but Tsuyoshi offered 9 million yen to cover the cost, asking if that amount would be sufficient. Upon seeing the money, the vendor completely changed his attitude. He asked Tsuyoshi to sit down while he prepared the requested ingredients. He said that taking everything out of the warehouse would take some time. He also informed him that the full stock would cost 6.6 million yen, but Tsuyoshi decided to leave the remaining 2.4 million as a deposit for future purchases. He said that, if necessary, they could even formalize a contract. He had already prepared all the paperwork. The vendor saw no issue with the terms and considered the deposit more than enough, since the ingredients in question had stable market value. After concluding the deal, Tsuyoshi returned to the apartment and went to the newly installed laboratory. He realized the space was more suitable than he had imagined. Karina appeared and told him that President Suzuki had covered all the renovation and adaptation costs with his own money. Touched by the gesture, Tsuyoshi decided he would repay the favor as soon as he had the chance. He explained that he had created that lab because of an old promise. His goal was to make his sister smile again, like in the happy days of the past. Karina didn't quite understand what he meant, but he preferred not to explain and asked her to leave because he needed to concentrate. She left, still confused, and Tsuyoshi apologized, explaining that he needed absolute focus. Right after, he began the preparations. He took a wooden box from his Divine Sense inventory and removed prepackaged potion ingredients from his spatial ring. He would need 3 essential ingredients to produce a basic circulatory stimulant, plus 6 different ingredients for each of the other 2 potions he planned to prepare. The Divine Eye showed its true value at that moment. It not only automatically analyzed the ideal ingredients from that world, but also guided him through the correct refining process. That's why Tsuyoshi didn't think he would have any difficulties. In the final stage of the first potion, he mixed the extract of ant grass with green vine extract, respecting a 1:3 ratio. After that, he set the mixture to heat. Although the equipment was simple, he believed it would be sufficient for now. In the ordinary world, the process would end there. However, the matter of heating and chemical reactions made the mixture's success unstable. Refinement depended on precision and control, and he was about to discover discover how far his talent could take him. Tsuyoshi decided to use some shaman techniques to speed up the fusion process and the infusion of mana into the mixture. This would drastically increase the success rate and also enhance the medicinal effects of the formula. For the first time, he could use the basic staff he had bought before returning to that world. Since the inventory space was limited, he had left the Divine King's hammer in the other world. However, since time was frozen there, he believed it wouldn't be a problem. He carefully began the fusion process and, after a few minutes of precise work, completed the task successfully. To test the effects of the potion, he decided to drink it himself. After all, he had always been his own lab rat. The result was excellent. The effects on his body were clear, and he was extremely satisfied. No common capsule from that world could produce similar results. However, there was a problem. The taste was simply awful. So, he decided to condense the mixture into capsules. With 2 worlds at his disposal, each offering different possibilities, the exploration options for Tsuyoshi were nearly endless. With that in mind, he decided to start mass production of the basic circulatory stimulant. If the market response was positive, everything would go according to his plans. The next day, he went to the entrance of a busy cave, a place full of adventurers. He had his face covered by a hood to hide his identity. He believed that was the perfect place to launch his products. He carried a good stock of power capsules with him. When he arrived, he began drawing everyone's attention. He shouted that he had something new for those tired of the market's common capsule. He announced he was selling a pack with 6 capsules, perfect for adventurers. People approached, curious, but were shocked by the price. 24,000 yen per pack. The outrage was so great that many thought it was a scam. Some even threatened to attack him. However, he remained calm and revealed that he had free sample. He said that if the effects weren't satisfactory, they could tear down his stand. But if they were impressed, they would have to buy a full box. One of the loudest complainers decided to test it. As soon as he consumed the capsule, his recovery was instant. His eyes widened at the effect. Tsuyoshi, confidently, explained that the capsule increased HP and stamina recovery by 45% and reduced damage taken by 12%, lasting for 10 minutes. The response was immediate. Everyone nearby wanted the product. A line quickly formed, and Tsuyoshi set a limit, 10 boxes per person. Customers began calling friends and family. The news spread, the line grew, and profits began to increase exponentially. The impact was so great that it reached Red Tier, one of the 3 largest pharmaceutical companies. In the report review room, during a meeting with the production team, the atmosphere was tense. The managers discussed the numbers. The prices of 3 main products, including those from their own company, had dropped drastically, reduced to half their original value. The reason was clear. Black capsules had appeared on the market with similar effects, but superior quality. These products didn't belong to any of the well-known major pharmaceutical companies. The capsules in question were Tsuyoshi's, the circulatory stimulant capsule, the nutritional capsule, and the mana recharge capsule. That was when Misa, the president of Red Tier, entered the room. She stated that the company could not fall behind. She said a wide investigation into the new competitor had already been launched, and the details would be reported soon. Even so, Misa acknowledged that the company's pace was too slow, and this was putting everything at risk. Meanwhile, in front of a dungeon entrance, Tsuyoshi was surrounded by adventurers and merchants who, impressed by the effectiveness of his products, were offering far more than the original price to secure their stock. He felt that a week had already passed since he began distribution, and everything was going exactly as planned. The bait was set. Now, all that was left was to wait for the prey to arrive. Suddenly, she appeared. Misa, the president of Red Tier herself, stood before him. With a sharp smile, she declared that she would pay 100 times the original price just for 10 minutes of the seller's precious time. Tsuyoshi smiled inwardly. To him, that was a clear sign he had hooked a big fish. They met in a reserved location to talk in peace. Misa expressed her gratitude for the time the young man had made available and took the opportunity to formally introduce herself, revealing that she was the president of Red Tier. The protagonist was surprised to discover that one of the leaders of the country's top 3 pharmaceutical companies was such a young and beautiful woman. Without beating around the bush, Misa got straight to the point. She wanted to buy the formula for the 3 types of capsules he was selling. The protagonist, maintaining a firm posture, stated that the price was 10 billion yen. This proposal left Misa quite surprised. To her, that value was excessive, especially since Red Tier's budget had already been exhausted. Therefore, she suggested he discuss it with his associates, explaining that the maximum they could offer was 3 billion yen. Even considering the formula's high level, she believed that was a fair offer. However, the protagonist immediately refused. He explained that unless it was 10 billion, the deal would not happen. He also said he had no associates and had developed the 3 capsules on his own. According to him, these capsules would directly impact market competitiveness, and since Red Tier was facing a serious crisis, the price was justified. Misa was surprised to realize he knew about the company's delicate situation. The protagonist then showed a detailed chart which illustrated that Oyama, Red Tier, and Tatsumi dominated the capsule market. However, based on the data he had gathered, Red Tier's market share had dropped from 26 to 12% over the past 23 years. The company's products had lost their competitive edge. The president was even more impressed by how well prepared the young man was for the conversation. Tsuyoshi knew that with superior capsules like those, the market could be reshaped. escape, and if Red Tier had access to the formula, it could lead once more. That was why he believed 10 billion yen was not too high a price. Faced with so many arguments and the young man's firm stance, Misa agreed to the price. But since they were conducting an honest transaction, she at least asked to know his name. The protagonist revealed his name, but asked that it be kept confidential. After that, they shook hands in agreement. One of Misa's subordinates handed him a card loaded with 10 billion yen. In the end, Misa did not regret her decision. She recognized the young man's potential, who, despite being so young, demonstrated genius. To her, someone like that should be protected at all costs. Now that they had obtained the formulas, Red Tier's team could begin planning the next major marketing strategy. Later, in a cafe, Tsuyoshi told everything to President Suzuki, who was shocked that he had managed to earn so much money in just 1 week. The president ended up speaking so loudly that several employees nearby overheard and were astonished. The young man then showed the transaction card and explained that he had sold a valuable formula. He wanted to know if the president could reserve his spot at the auction, but Tsuyoshi also needed to fulfill the second condition, reaching C-rank hero status. Suzuki reminded him that to participate in the Supernova tournament, he needed to rank among the top 3 in at least 2 public dungeons. The problem was that there was only 1 day left. Even so, Tsuyoshi believed that would be enough. He asked the president to show him the public dungeons the next morning. That night, at his mansion, his sister said goodnight before heading to bed. Since he would face a dungeon the next day, he thought he should become a little stronger first. He had been stuck at level 12 and knew he needed to level up. So, he decided to go to the other world. Upon arriving, he noticed that Sakura still hadn't returned. He felt that in that world, he couldn't do much without her. Even so, he believed she must have heard about his victory in the refinement tournament and might return the next day. But then, some crows approached and a large explosion occurred around him. He wanted to understand who was launching that surprise magic attack. A member of the Nightbird tribe appeared. She was a level 32 mage who thought the protagonist wouldn't be able to dodge her spell. Clearly, Tsuyoshi didn't understand why she was targeting him. He suspected the Assassin Guild might be behind it. Right after, he sensed another presence. A level 30 assassin class man appeared behind him and tried to ambush him. Tsuyoshi quickly blocked the attack and activated his ultimate body reinforcement ability. Then he stated that he didn't recall ever crossing paths with them. The mage explained that both of them had been hired and, unfortunately, he was just an unlucky target. The assassin, curious, wanted to understand how a level 12 youth had resisted their attacks so well. His movements and resilience didn't match his level. Then the two enemies coordinated their moves and launched a joint attack. Even so, the boy managed to dodge again. Without wasting time, he activated his Chain Thunderfall ability, ready to face that unexpected duo. The mage quickly cast an energy shield to protect herself. Meanwhile, the assassin carefully observed the protagonist's movements and finally concluded that, with that kind of skill, it really didn't make sense for him to be only level 12. Still, since Tsuyoshi was technically a low-level opponent, the assassin decided to end it quickly, taking him painlessly to another world. The assassin advanced with a special ability, but once again, Tsuyoshi managed to block the attack. The mage was already preparing another powerful technique to launch next. Although he was managing to defend himself, the impacts began to weigh on Tsuyoshi's body, placing him in a dilemma. He didn't know whether he should use the Divine King's hammer and risk his own life in that battle, or try to endure a bit longer. Under growing pressure, he decided to summon the hammer. In the next instant, he heard a familiar voice asking if he was hiding something. His eyes widened upon recognizing that voice. It was Kevin, who appeared with a threatening presence. Without hesitation, Kevin activated a secret seal he had implanted in the protagonist's body earlier. The seal exploded, causing heavy damage to Tsuyoshi. Kevin then explained that after removing the darkness impurities from the boy's body, he thought it best to embed the secret directly into him. The mysterious energy radiating from Tsuyoshi was fascinating, and Kevin wanted to know if it was the true source of the boy's absurd talent. Tsuyoshi, on the other hand, didn't understand why Kevin was doing that to him. In Kevin's mind, the protagonist was only pretending to be harmless, when in reality, he was, according to him, a reckless fool. The mage couldn't believe that Kevin himself had shown up, while the assassin remarked that with the injuries the boy had suffered, he probably wouldn't be able to escape this time. Kevin, in turn, thanked them both for their help. He recalled the material he had requested and said that the boy should no longer fight. The secret was embedded in his body, and he had left him alive when he was completely defenseless. Tsuyoshi still didn't understand the reason behind all this, as he had never done anything against Kevin, but the master explained that the boy's talent and refinement was a direct threat to him, and that was why he had to die. This revelation made Tsuyoshi start laughing. Deep down, he understood that the great master Kevin, considered a true genius, was afraid of him, and faced with that fear, he had lowered himself to cowardly methods. These words made Kevin furious. Enraged, he promised he would shatter the boy's brain right there. That was when Fulin appeared, running toward them. She begged her master to leave Tsuyoshi alone. Kevin was surprised to see Fulin showing compassion for a human. However, he said she had nothing to do with it and should leave immediately. When she hesitated, Kevin attacked with full force, hitting Fulin mercilessly. Kevin declared that it didn't matter who showed up, because that day would be the end of Tsuyoshi. He then began casting a cruel spell called Annihilation, a spell that concentrated immense magical magical energy directly into the opponent's brain, deforming everything inside slowly and painfully. In the middle of it, the protagonist received a system notification informing him that an update was in progress. 10% of the surrounding energy had been successfully absorbed to repair his body. This process caused him to begin radiating an extremely powerful energy. Kevin, seeing this, was intrigued, as his magic had been absorbed in the blink of an eye. The mage was also perplexed to see that Tsuyoshi was still alive. She couldn't understand how that was possible. In truth, thanks to Fulin's interference, the boy had gained just enough time. At the moment of the explosion caused by the seal, the divine selection system activated an emergency alert, triggering an automatic regeneration process. During the update, the system continuously absorbed energy, but this function was temporarily paused while the body underwent deep repairs. Now, Tsuyoshi knew there was nowhere left to run. Either he killed Kevin, or he would die right there. It didn't matter how much pain he had to endure. Even with his body destroyed, he was determined to take everyone down. With effort, he once again summoned the Divine King's hammer. Since the system update was still in progress, the hammer gained a new function. It began to repair the user's body continuously. All of Tsuyoshi's muscles would be destroyed and regenerated repeatedly, causing unbearable pain. Kevin, watching it all, realized that the boy's energy was unstable, yet incredibly powerful. Even so, he wanted to understand how the boy was managing to do all of that, as it defied all logic he knew. In the end, Tsuyoshi began to think that he was turning disaster into opportunity. The Divine King's hammer continued to destroy his body little by little, while the system kept repairing it non-stop during the update. With that, he believed he could reduce his enemies to dust. Frightened, Kevin decided to conjure an energy shield to protect himself, but it was useless. Tsuyoshi charged forward with full force, shattered the shield with ease, and made it clear that he would fulfill his promise. He would turn everyone there to dust, even if it cost him his life. Meanwhile, on the other side, Sakura was walking with difficulty. She was injured and trembling from the pain. A level 58 beastman, wounded and panicked, begged for mercy. He just wanted to flee that place. But Sakura, filled with anger, asked what he was talking about, since she clearly remembered that back then, he had shown no mercy to her father. The beastman tried to justify himself. He said he wasn't the mastermind behind that action, and thought Sakura had left this world along with the Beast King. However, to her, that made no difference. Even if he hadn't been the leader, he was still an accomplice. His name was written in her notebook, along with all those who betrayed her father, and she would take justice into her own hand. The beastman explained that he had been threatened. Her father's rival, now the current Beast King, was too powerful, and if he had refused to obey, he would have lost his own life. Even so, Sakura showed no mercy. She drew her sword, and the beastman did the same, ready to fight to the end. If he was going to die, he would try to kill her first. Sakura then used her special ability called Flower Storm. The attack was precise and deadly. Before falling, the beastman murmured that she had truly mastered her father's technique. For Sakura, finding that traitor there was unexpected. He had been the gatekeeper who secretly opened the gates for the enemies, and now she reaffirmed to herself that no traitor would escape. Suddenly, she felt an immense and powerful presence. She knew instantly that her master was in danger. On the other side, Tsuyoshi was already in a critical state. The pain was unbearable. His bones broke repeatedly, and his soul felt like it was burning. He knew that if the system update reached 100%, his body could be completely destroyed. At that moment, the assassin tried to attack him. However, the magical pressure around Tsuyoshi was so intense that the enemy couldn't move. This was only possible because of the Divine King's hammer, which emitted a strong electrical energy. Any enemy without high lightning resistance was instantly paralyzed. Tsuyoshi looked directly at the assassin, who was still trying to approach, and concluded he had a death wish. Without hesitation, he struck him with all his might. Now, only Kevin and the mage remained. The system update was 48% complete, and the body collapse limit had reached 6.6%. Kevin, realizing the situation, ordered the mage to avoid any close combat. He could clearly see that something was wrong with the energy surrounding Tsuyoshi, and that aura was becoming increasingly unstable. The mage, exhausted and without healing potions, ended up surrendering. But Tsuyoshi, with a smile twisted by pain and rage, said she wouldn't have that chance. She had tried to kill him, and now it was too late. With incredible speed, he approached and struck the mage with all his strength. The system update reached 63%, and the collapse limit dangerously rose to 76%. Upon seeing his ally die, Kevin was outraged. He had trusted them to stop Tsuyoshi's advance, but now he was the only one left. With no other option, Kevin unleashed a powerful ability called Laws of Earth, Wind, and Thunder. He claimed that Tsuyoshi had no idea of the power behind the magical laws, and that a genius like him would never be brought down by someone so inferior. Still, Kevin admitted that the fact he had to resort to elemental laws showed just how far Tsuyoshi had come. The attack was launched, but it didn't have the impact he expected. The system panel made it clear. Tsuyoshi was rapidly approaching total collapse, with 86% accumulated instability. Knowing that he had already surpassed all human limits, he decided to sacrifice his life. To do so, he forced the release of 30% of the Divine King's hammer's power, even though the system update was still at 63%. He knew that choice meant completely destroying his body, but he didn't hesitate. In that moment, there was no room left for mercy. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me keep bringing videos like this for you. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Thanks for the support.